Chapter 1, Nanchuan Shenzhou, Spiritual Realm, Han Qin Empire, Gu Family Estate. Ye Cheng leaned against the outer wall of the Gu family courtyard, watching clusters of teenagers wander back and forth in groups of 3 or 5. At 17, he was the same age as those lively youths, yet he stood apart, silent and solitary. 17 years ago, he had arrived on Tianchuan continent, a world bound by the laws of cultivation. Every practitioner strove to ascend a hierarchy of power, from body forging through true spirit, catastrophe, king, venerable, emperor, and beyond. Rumor spoke of realms even higher than emperor, but none that Ye Cheng could hope to reach in his lifetime. Within the Han Qin Empire, reaching catastrophe realm marks one as formidable. Most elders of the great sects stand at that level, while those at king realm serve as the revered progenitors of their clans. Ye Cheng's own journey had begun at age 5, and he had never spared himself in training. Day after day, he pushed his limits while his peers dallied or rested. Now, at the outset of his 18th year, he stood at the first echelon of true spirit, a level unmatched among the younger generation of the Gu family. As he surveyed the busy courtyard, he allowed himself a faint smile. In a house full of ambitious youths, none rivaled his dedication or his potential. And yet, despite his achievements, Ye Cheng felt the ever-present tug of unease. Great power lay ahead, but so did countless trials. Taking a steadying breath, he pushed off the wall and strode into the heart of the estate, ready to face whatever challenges awaited him next. Ye Cheng gazed out over the sprawling Han Qin Empire, his eyes drifting even beyond into the boundless spirit realm. Against such immensity, he was nothing more than a single drop in an endless ocean, a speck of dust, utterly indistinct, completely insignificant. He couldn't help but mutter in self-mockery, "I'm the real embarrassment among all these time-traveling seniors." Most travelers were born with supreme bones or chaos bodies, blessed by powerful patrons, or even equipped with some hidden golden finger system to guide their progress. What did he have? Nothing. No system, no secret lineage, just himself, plain and unremarkable. He let out a wry laugh. "Well, maybe a simple life isn't so bad," he said, though the reluctance in his voice betrayed him. He could rail against fate all he liked, but it was useless. He would have to make do. A soft knock came at the door. One of his servants slipped inside and bowed deeply. "Young master, someone from the Jiang family is here. The family head requests your presence." "The Jiang family?" Ye Cheng's heart skipped a beat. Then he remembered. He wasn't utterly without assets. He did have one trump card, his bargain bride, Jiang Baiwei. Unlike House Gu, which ruled over a small border town, the Jiang clan was one of the 3 great families of the Han Qin Empire, supported by at least 5 king-class warriors. He straightened, smoothing the front of his simple robes. "Very well," he replied. "Please send word that I will attend at once." In the Han Qin Empire's long history, few figures loom as large as the ancestor of the Jiang clan, venerated by all as Jiang Tianwang. A perfect king-level cultivator, he stands only half a foot below the fabled god-king realm. In the empire's hierarchy, the king realm itself is split into 3 tiers, Xuanwang, Tianwang, and the ultimate Shenwang, and those who attain the Tianwang level occupy the very pinnacle of power. Opposite one another sit 2 great lineages of the Han Qin world. On one side stands the Jiang family, one of the empire's 3 great houses. On the other, the modest Gu clan, whose seat lies in a border town far from the capital's grandeur. The Gu clan's mightiest scion is Ye Cheng's father, Gu Yuan, renowned across the frontier as the 6th calamity of the Calamity Realm. To worldly eyes, the Jiang and Gu families share little beyond their mutual prominence. Yet beneath the surface, their destinies are entwined by an ancient, extraordinary bond. Tens of thousands of years ago, the Gu family basked in its greatest glory. Their ranks teemed with legendary figures, divine emperors and heavenly masters who upheld the sacred traditions of the spirit realm. Even the Jiang clan once served as a vassal house under the Gu banner, owing fealty to their mightier kin. But no splendor lasts forever. Roughly 8,000 years ago, the Gu lineage was struck by a catastrophe so profound that its echoes still haunt the fringes of memory. What calamity befell them and how it reshaped both families' fortunes is a tale whose reverberations continue to shape the Han Qin Empire to this day. 3 millennia ago, the Gu clan stood among the mightiest powers of the spirit world, its emperor-tier champions invincible, its secret techniques and treasures unrivaled. But catastrophe struck. The clan's greatest warriors fell in battle, its vaults were ransacked, and only scattered fragments of their legacy survived. Since that day, the Gu clan has been in steady decline. No scion has ever again risen to emperor rank, and the clan's once potent bloodline force has all but faded. Today, the Gu clan survives only as a modest household in a remote border town of the Han Qin Empire. Its lingering prestige rests solely on the shoulders of Gu Yuan, father of our young protagonist Ye Cheng, who alone still commands the 6th level of the Calamity Realm. Yet even this measure of strength falls far short of reviving the clan's glory. The only way to restore the Gu bloodline is for someone within it to break through to the Emperor realm, but for a family whose power has all but vanished, such an ascent seems impossibly distant. 3,000 years ago, the Gu ancestors wagered everything they had in a desperate bid to cultivate a new emperor. They marshaled every resource, poured all their hopes into that single effort, and still they failed. Over time, the memory of their former greatness dimmed until it became little more than legend. By contrast, the Zhang family, once mere vassals sworn to the Gu, have thrived. Generation after generation, they have produced extraordinary talent and steadily climbed the ranks of power. Watching the Zhejiang's ascendancy only deepens the Gu clan's sense of ruin. And so the question remains, can Ye Cheng, born into a bloodline on the brink of extinction, seize the chance to reclaim his family's honor by ascending to the Emperor realm? Or are the Gu destined to remain forgotten in the dusty annals of history? A century has passed since King Zhang's rise, and in that time the Zhang clan has reached its pinnacle of power. Now the clan's current patriarch stands on the brink of achieving the God King realm. Once he breaks through, even the great Han and Qin royal families will have no choice but to bow to the Zhang name. Ever since the last Gu family king died, ties between the two clans have withered. No matter how glorious the Gus once were, those days are long gone. Today, the Gu family is a minor house without even a king to its name, so it's only natural that the triumphant Zhang family looks down on them. The only reason they agreed to marry Zhang Baiwei, daughter of the Zhang clan leader, to Ye Cheng is because the the Jiangs, owe the Gus an unrepayable debt stretching back hundreds of years. Throughout that entire time, the Gus never once mentioned this favor or sought to collect on it. But now, seeing that none of the Gu family's 4 successive generations has shown the slightest promise of breaking into the Tribulation realm, Ye Cheng's father, Gu Yuan, has grown desperate. With his clan slipping further into obscurity, he knows that if he does not act soon, the Gu family may lose its last hope of regaining any measure of its former glory. Ye Cheng sat rigidly in the courtyard, each breath growing colder as his father's words sank in. Across 3 generations, the Gu family had produced only one Tribulation Realm cultivator, Gu Yuan, and even that was a stroke of luck rather than skill. Ye Cheng's own talent, while respectable, would likely stall at 9th level True Spirit. Reaching the Tribulation Realm, where one defies heaven itself, was all but impossible for someone like him. If this decline continues unchecked, his father had warned, voice low and grave, the Gu family won't survive another few generations. That warning had set the wheels in motion. Now Ye Cheng found himself the centerpiece of a desperate family strategy. His father rose from the stone bench. "Son, our family's future rests on your shoulders. I've arranged a marriage for you with the daughter of head elder Jiang." Ye Cheng frowned, but his father held up a dismissive hand. "Don't worry about the details. The Jiangs owed our ancestors a favor, and I called it in. With her by your side, our bloodline will prosper again. You must produce heirs, many heirs, dozens of them if possible." The sheer absurdity of it hit Ye Cheng like a slap. "Dozens," he echoed, incredulous. "Father, I'm not some beast." "Beasts multiply," his father retorted, "and so must we." He turned away satisfied, leaving Ye Cheng to swallow his humiliation. A servant burst in then, breathless. "Master, forgive the interruption." But before the servant could continue, Ye Cheng felt a sudden tingle at the base of his skull, as if someone had struck a tuning fork there. A cold, clinical voice echoed inside his mind. "Ding! Congratulations, host, on activating the Many Children, Many Blessings system. Ye Cheng froze. The servant blinked. In the tense silence that followed, only one question burned in Ye Cheng's mind. What on earth was this system, and why had it just woken up? Ye Cheng had been waiting for that pleasant ding his whole life, and now, finally, it sounded. He blinked at the floating text before him, hardly believing what he saw. So that's it. My system has arrived. He'd waited a long time, 17 years, in fact, but wasn't this a little late? He was already 17 and on the brink of marriage. Still, he forced himself to focus. The system's name glowed at the top of the window, Multi-Child Blessing System. Below it lay exactly one function, reproduce. Ye Cheng swallowed. The system would reward him based on each child's innate talent. The smarter, more gifted the baby, the greater the bonus. And there was an achievement track. The 10th child, the 100th child, the 1000th child. Each milestone unlocked its own grand reward. Now it made sense why the system had only appeared at the moment he was about to start a family. If he'd known this, he might have begged his father to let him marry and have kids years sooner. Maybe at 15, or heck, even 10. He shook his head with a rueful grin. Better late than never, right? With that thought, Ye Cheng tapped the Activate Function button. The soft ding chimed once more, confirming that his journey to fatherhood and to those precious rewards had officially begun. Ye Cheng tapped his fingers on the console, a playful smile crossing his face. System. Other worlds give out beginner gift packs. Don't you have one for me? The system's smooth, emotionless voice replied, affirmative. Ye Cheng's grin widened. System detects 3 unopened random beginner gift packs in the host's inventory. Shall I open them now? Open, the system responded. A moment later, a translucent panel materialized in front of him, listing the world's cultivation stages. Body Refining Realm, levels 1 to 9. Spirit Formation Realm, levels 1-9. Disaster Tribulation Realm, levels 1 to 9. King Realm, Xuan King, Heavenly King, Divine King. Emperor Realm, Mysterious Huang, Heavenly Huang, Divine Huang, Sacred Huang. Venerable Realm, Mysterious Zun, Heavenly Zun, Divine Zun, Dao Zun. Great Emperor Realm, Xuan Emperor, Heavenly Huang, Divine Huang, Earth Sovereign, Saint Realm, and beyond. Ye Cheng leaned forward, anticipation prickling at his skin. 3 gift packs, 3 chances to turn the tide of his fate. With bated breath, he prepared to claim whatever blessing the system had in store. Chapter 2. Ding! Congratulations, host. You have obtained the Imperial-grade mental art, Taishuan Sutra. Open the second one. Ding! Congratulations, host. You have obtained the Imperial-grade alchemy technique, Dan Di Heart Sutra. Holy hell! As soon as he read the notifications, Ye Cheng's heart pounded. 2 techniques and both Imperial grade. He'd spent his whole life training with the Gu family's legacy, a mere fragment of a king-level mental art passed down through generations. That alone made his clan the weakest among the East's major powers. Numerous king-level forces boasted full king-level martial heirs, yet the Gu family had nothing of the sort. In this world, cultivation was divided into 7 tiers: mortal, earth, sky, king, emperor, venerable, and god. Emperor-level techniques, like the ones he'd just acquired, were nearly unheard of outside the greatest sects. To stumble upon not 1 but 2 such treasures at once was nothing short of miraculous. Breathing deeply, Ye Cheng steadied himself. With the Taishuan Sutra and the Dan Di Heart Sutra in his grasp, his path to true power had finally opened. For the first time, hope stirred in his heart. Perhaps he could elevate the Gu family, shatter its long-standing shadow of weakness, and claim a place among the Empire's greatest. Even at the Gu family's peak, tens of thousands of years ago, their ultimate mental cultivation technique barely reached the venerable rank. Yet here were 2 Imperial-level skills, the very pinnacle of power, normally reserved for the Emperor's court, now in Ye Cheng's hands. He'd felt a twinge of resentment when the system appeared so late, but that feeling evaporated the moment he saw the gifts laid before him. He opened the system's space and studied the 2 grimoire-like scrolls. The first, the Taishuan scripture, was Emperor Xuan's magnum opus. It comprised 4 chapters, and with each chapter he completed, his ability to absorb spiritual energy and advance his cultivation would surge exponentially. The second, the Dan Di Heart scripture, had been penned by Master Qingmu Dandy. It recorded Qingmu's lifetime of alchemical research, detailing his unique methods and even listing every pill formula he had ever created. Holding these treasures, Ye Cheng felt an excitement he had never known. With imperial techniques of this caliber at his disposal, the next chapters of his journey promised to be legendary. Ye Cheng flipped through the stack of recipes at his feet. They ranged from basic elixirs to advanced formation manuals, many of them worn and illegible. He tapped his control console. Open the third gift bag. He hadn't planned on keeping this one. Still, the system chimed in almost immediately. Ding! Congratulations, host. Your luck has exploded. You've obtained an immortal rank technique, the immortal sword formation. Immortal rank? Immortal sword formation? Ye Cheng's heart thumped so loudly he was afraid the others might hear. He'd already drawn 2 emperor rank techniques in a row. By all rights, his next roll should have been mediocre. Instead, this third gift bag had outshone them both. A moment later, the system clarified. Above emperor rank comes sage rank, and above sage is immortal. Ye Cheng exhaled in disbelief. No wonder the console had issued a special alert. This was truly a once-in-a-lifetime stroke of luck. As he stared at the newly acquired Juxian sword formation manual, its pages seemed to hum with power. An immortal-level formation was said to defy the heavens themselves, and now it was his. An immortal-level sword formation? According to the system, the Juxian sword formation was devised by the Kangwu immortal king, who once used it to defeat an immortal emperor despite only holding the immortal king's rank. The lethality of the formation scales directly with the grade of the spiritual swords arrayed within it. The more advanced the blades, the deadlier the strike. Ye Cheng's head spun. Immortal king? Immortal emperor? The highest realm he'd ever heard of was the emperor realm. These titles must belong to planes of existence far above his own. Even the greatest prodigies of the grand realm, the scions of supreme destiny, who cultivate at a level equal to or slightly above him, how many of them could survive more than a few breaths under the onslaught of the Juxian sword formation? Master? The servant's soft voice pulled Ye Cheng back from his reverie. He cleared his throat, reminding himself that now was hardly the time for idle speculation over cultivation tiers. Envoys from the Jiang family had arrived to formalize the marriage alliance. Suppressing his curiosity about the ancient formation, he followed his attendants toward the reception hall. Ye Cheng paused at the threshold of the main hall, unsettled by the tense atmosphere inside. His father, Gu Yuan, sat in the patriarch's seat, his face dark and forbidding. We agreed it would be Zhang Baiwei, Gu Yuan said, voice low and steady. Now they've switched to Zhang Lianxin? That's out of the question. Where is Patriarch Zhang? Gu Yuan rose to his feet, his tone sharp. This marriage agreement was made between him and me. How can he overturn it on a whim? I'll go find him myself. The Jiang family elder bowed respectfully and shook his head. Please, Patriarch Gu, you must understand, this is precisely the decision the Patriarch wished. Gu Yuan snorted. If he had the courage to face me, he wouldn't send you as his messenger. He shot a glance at his son before turning back to the elder. Zhang Baiwei is capable and well regarded, but Zhang Lianxin? He waved a hand dismissively. She can't even dress or bathe herself without a servant's help. Why on earth would I accept her? The elder inclined his head. Your concerns are understandable, but you must know Miss Lianxin is far from helpless. Born with spiritual bones, she is the greatest prodigy the Jiang family has produced in 1,000 years. Should she survive to adulthood, there's every chance she could one day reach the emperor realm. Silence fell in the hall as Ye Cheng absorbed this news. The intended alliance had shifted, yet another complication in a game where every family's reputation and power hung in the balance. Zhang Lianxin had been a prodigy from the moment she was born. The Jiang family spared no expense in her upbringing. Private tutors, rare spirit herbs, and the finest cultivation manuals were lavished on her, and she repaid their investment 100-fold. By the age of 6, she had completed her body forging. By 10, she had awakened her true spirit, and at just 16 she shattered the ceiling of the mortal tribulation realm, a milestone that even seasoned masters struggle to reach in a lifetime. To put her talent in perspective, consider the Gu family's strongest cultivator, its patriarch, Gu Yuan, who is also Ye Cheng's father. Despite decades of training, Gu Yuan remains at the 6th level of the mortal tribulation realm. Yet Zhang Lianxin, barely out of childhood, soared far beyond him. Not long after her breakthrough, fate threw her a gauntlet that would change everything. While training in the wilds beyond the Empire's borders, she encountered a saint from the legendary Kanglan Holy Land. Confident in his divine authority, the saint issued a formal challenge. What followed was swift and decisive. With a single, awe-inspiring surge of power, Zhang Lianxin overwhelmed him, her aura like a tempest, her will unbreakable. When the dust settled, the saint lay defeated, and Zhang Lianxin's name trembled on the lips of every cultivator in the realm. The Kanglan saintess said nothing. Instead, her personal guardian stepped forward and struck Zhang Lianxin down, judging that his previous attack had been far too brutal. After all, Zhang Lianxin was only a tribulation realm cultivator. His strength paled in comparison to a heavenly king. With a single, devastating blow, the guardian shattered Zhang Lianxin's spirit bones and sent him sprawling, grievously wounded. Zhang Lianxin had once been the shining prodigy of the Jiang family, backed by his own Hector, an early-stage Xuan king. But the gulf between the Xuan king realm and the heavenly king realm is vast, and the distance to the God king realm is almost unfathomable. Against a true heavenly king, Zhang Lianxin's guardian stood no chance. The saintess watched it happen and did nothing to stop her guardian from crippling him. From that day forward, Zhang Lianxin was no longer the dazzling genius everyone admired. His spirit shattered alongside his bones, and he became a cripple, his fall from grace lamented by countless onlookers throughout the cultivation world. Beyond the Empire's borders, the Jiang clan seethed with anger and resentment, but none dared speak out against the mighty Kanglan Holy Land. Its power was overwhelming. It counted multiple emperors among its ranks. Against such strength, the entire Han Qin Empire, and certainly the modest Jiang family, might as well have been a colony of ants. Still, they spared no effort to save Zhang Lianxin's shattered spirit bones. Clan Patriarch Jiang personally traveled beyond the Empire, seeking treatment from every renowned alchemist he could find, even those at the 4th grade Dan King level. Yet no remedy proved effective. Only a Tianzun Great Emperor or a Danzun-level alchemist could repair such grievous injuries. Figures so exalted that the Jiang family, a minor imperial house, had no hope of contacting them, much less begging for their assistance. In the end, they could do nothing but bow to fate. Once heralded as the clan's brightest hope, Zhang Lianxin was left to her fate, a blow from which Patriarch Jiang and his family would struggle to recover. After that day, King Jiang announced he would retreat into seclusion and withdraw entirely from clan affairs. Gu Yuan let out a low sigh. He understood why the Jiang family might sympathize with Zhang Lianxin's misfortune, but sympathy didn't mean he agreed to the marriage. What he sought was a wife who could strengthen the Gu household and carry on its legacy. Zhang Lianxin's spirit foundation had been shattered, and her talent was now no better than that of an ordinary person. How could the child she bore possibly be exceptional? Zheng Baiwei, however, was a different story. Though she had never matched Lianxin's brilliance in earlier years, today she far surpassed her sister's capabilities. Among the younger generation of the Jiang clan, Baiwei was unquestionably the most outstanding. The sudden hesitation on the part of the Jiang family struck Gu Yuan as suspicious. There must be a hidden motive. He cleared his throat. What reason could they have for changing their minds so abruptly? The Jiang family elder shook his head. All in good time, you'll understand. With that, the elder rose and quietly left the Gu residence. Within moments, he had vanished from sight in the grand hall. In the Gu family's drawing room, the elders sat in sullen silence, grief and indignation etched into every furrowed brow. Gu Yuan leaned back in his chair, as if the weight of their ruined prospects had aged him several years in an instant. They were powerless. Once again peers of the Jiang clan, the Gu family now lacked the standing to broker any honor, no matter the favors the Jiangs once owed them. Things had changed too drastically. The Jiangs were reduced to a minor house that couldn't even claim a Xuan king title. Gu Yuan closed his eyes and sighed. It's no use. Let it go. Just then, his son strode in. Ye Cheng's shoulders were squared with restless energy, anger masked by calm composure. Gu Yuan offered him a bittersweet smile. Ye Cheng, you've already heard. The Zhangs refuse to send Jiang Baiwei to our house. At best, they'll let us marry Lianxin. Ye Cheng's jaw tightened. He looked at his father, searching for a way out of this humiliating predicament. Gu Yuan raked a hand through his hair and gave a weary shrug. My failure, not yours. If you won't accept this engagement, we'll call it off. I'll find another match for you, one that won't drag our family's name through the mud. He hesitated. But who even knows? Is Jiang Lianxin? Not a soul among the younger circles of the Han and Qin courts has heard of her. Silence fell again as father and son exchanged glances, heavy with unspoken questions. The Gu family's future hung in the balance, and neither man knew what might come next. Ye Cheng sat in the grand ancestral hall, half listening as his father extolled the virtues of noble daughters past. In the history of the Jue Empire, the old man thundered, countless aristocratic families boasted dreamlike heiresses, ladies whose looks outshone blossoms, whose talents were unparalleled. Yet today, they've all dwindled to nothing. As the eldest son of the Gu family, I will not be forced to marry a worthless girl. Ye Cheng's gaze, however, remained fixed on the faintly glowing interface hovering before him. It was the mate selection system's potential wives list, and every entry carried crucial data on bloodline, cultivation aptitude, and special gifts. He scrolled through mechanically. Jiang Baiwei, Wu Earth Spirit Body, Purple Grade 2, eldest daughter of the Jiang family's head. Jiang Meng, Martial Arts Prodigy, Green Grade Wang, second elder's daughter. Jiang Qingqing, Ordinary Talent, White Grade 6, Branch Family Concubine's daughter. Jiang Lianxin, Xuanbing Holy Bone, Gold Grade 1, currently impaired but restorable. Recommended restoration pills, Taishuan Bone Refining Pill, Judu Shengu Pill, Tianhun Rongshe Pill. Gold Grade. Ye Cheng's heart leapt. He'd memorized the system's hierarchy of innate gifts, black, white, green, blue, purple, orange, gold, and the legendary red. To find a broken Xuanbing Holy Bone rated at the very top of gold was astonishing. Even wounded, Lianxin's talent could, with those rare alchemical elixirs, ascend to the zenith of earthly cultivation. A cold thrill ran through him. While his father raged about worthless brides, the system had just presented a hidden treasure. If Jiang Lianxin truly could be restored, she would bring unprecedented power and prestige to the Gu family. Ye Cheng leaned forward, interest blazing in his eyes for the first time. This marriage, he realized, might be far more than a mere political alliance. Each talent color is divided into 9 ranks, from rank 1 up to rank 9. In general, a purple grade cultivator can aspire to reach the emperor tier, an orange grade might become a venerable, and gold talent stands poised at the threshold of emperorship. Ye Cheng's father paused mid-sentence. Gold talent means, he began, holds the posture of an emperor. Ye Cheng finished for him, voice alight with excitement. You've got it all wrong, father. The Jiang family completely underestimated Jiang Lianxin's gift. They thought she possessed only a spirit bone, but she actually has a holy bone, 1 rank above spirit bone. As long as that holy bone remains intact, she has the potential not just to impact the emperor tier, but to become an emperor herself. It's only 1 character difference in name, but in cultivation, it's a gulf of 1,000 miles. Spirit bone offers the hope of emperor, holy bone guarantees it. His father's eyes widened, but Ye Cheng barely dared to breathe. Then he leapt to his feet and blurted out, Father, I'm actually going to marry a future empress, the Jiang clan. You've truly outdone yourselves. We swapped me straight across for someone destined to be empress. And don't forget our pact. Whoever goes back on their word is a grandson. Jiang Lianxin's Xuanbing sacred bone may be shattered, but that poses no obstacle for Ye Cheng. He possesses the Dan Emperor Heart Sutra. The accompanying system even provides him with an extensive list of elixirs capable of mending the sacred bone. True, most of those formulas have been lost to time, but the Heart Sutra itself contains the recipe for the very elixir he needs. All he has to do is gather the rare ingredients and refine it himself. Ye Cheng's declaration rang out several decibels louder than before, jolting his father, Gu Yuan, from his thoughts. He'd been on the verge of offering comfort, believing his son rattled by the Jiang family's recent betrayal. Now Ye Cheng, eyes blazing with determination, cut him off. Father, he said, voice firm, if you honor the Jiang family's request, I will marry Liangyin and I want no one else. Gu Yuan's brow creased. Ye Cheng, But Lianshin is, well, she's not exceptional. Dad! Gu Yecheng's gaze sharpened. He couldn't let his father know about the system hidden in the Heart Sutra. Every piece of his plan depended on Zhang Lianshin becoming part of the Gu household, and, one day, his wife. Silence fell between them, but Gu Yecheng's resolve was unshakable. He would find those alchemical ingredients. He would restore the Xuanbing sacred bone, and he would make Zhang Lianshin his. Well, so it's Zhang Lianshin. In that moment, Gu Yecheng finally pieced together why the Zhang family had abruptly reversed their decision. A Wu Earth spirit body, a purple-tier spirit constitution, was no trivial matter. Such a body could one day rival an emperor. These talents only awaken after birth, and even then it's by chance. Many never stir at all. Apparently, Zhang Baiwei's spirit body had only just unlocked its Wu Earth spirit potential. No wonder the Zhang clan regretted passing her over. Without an awakened spirit body, Baiwei might only ever reach the Lord Realm. With it, she could aim even higher. To the Zhang family, that was infinitely more precious than any golden aptitude. How could they afford to let her slip away? Master Zhang cleared his throat, meeting Gu Yecheng's eager gaze. Gu Yecheng bowed low, his voice brimming with gratitude. Master Zhang, I cannot thank you enough. Even though Zhang Baiwei did not attend, you still honored us by sending Zhang Lianshin with her golden aptitude. He straightened and offered a respectful nod, every gesture perfectly measured to convey his heartfelt appreciation. The Zhang family really are considerate people. Worried I might marry someone without sufficient talent, they arranged for me to take a bride who looks every bit the female emperor. At the same time, if Zhang Lianshin had remained with her clan, her Xuanbing holy body would likely never recover. This match is, in fact, a golden opportunity for her. The moment Gu Yecheng learned of her qualifications, he found himself daydreaming about names for their future child. He could hardly believe how extraordinary that baby would be. His own talent might be only average, but his wife's foundation was phenomenal. She possessed the coveted golden holy body. On top of that, with the system he'd acquired boosting his cultivation, his current status might not shine yet, but it was bound to improve. Any child born to Zhang Lianshin and him would almost certainly inherit the makings of a great emperor. Chapter 3. Far to the east of the Han Qin Empire, the Zhang family estate sat 1,000 li from the Gu household. In an ornate courtyard, a lotus-fringed pavilion overlooked a koi pond. Upon a carved stone bench there sat Zhang Lianshin, once the pride of her clan. Now her slender frame was propped by silk-cushioned pillows, and she watched the fish drift beneath the surface with quiet melancholy in her dark, limpid eyes. A soft tap, tap on the flagstones drew her attention. Lianshin expected a servant come to escort her back indoors, but when she turned, she found herself staring at a woman of gentle beauty, her half-sister, Zhang Baiwei. Baiwei's grace and poise were undeniable, though her features were softer and less aristocratic than Lianshin's. Still, there was a family resemblance, the same high cheekbones, the same slender arch to the brows. For a moment Lianshin looked on in stunned surprise. Then slowly, she managed to smile. "Sister Baiwei," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. From the courtyard's shadowed corridor emerged their father, Zhang Yongkong, the current patriarch of the Zhang clan. His gaze rested on both daughters, a silent reminder that family duty and the secrets it concealed bound them all together. Zhang Lianshin and Zhang Baiwei were sisters in name only. Though they shared the same father, they'd never been close. Lianshin's mother, Zhang Yongkong's third wife, died shortly after giving birth, while Baiwei's mother was the second wife. Lianshin herself was cool and reserved, devoted entirely to her cultivation practice and keeping only a handful of acquaintances. In contrast, Baiwei had long harbored a burning envy for everything her stepsister possessed, her father's clear favoritism, the family's wealth and opportunities lavished on her, even her beauty and talent. That envy had warped Baiwei's heart over the years. Now, seeing Lianshin standing there, sad and vulnerable, Baiwei felt a cruel satisfaction. She had been waiting for this moment as eagerly as one might await a long-planned revenge. "Father has decided you're to be married off to that Gu boy," she said, her voice deceptively gentle. "Our family's former prodigy, the one every young man dreamed of, is going to wed the heir of a small, fading clan. Isn't it deliciously ironic?" In truth, Gu Yecheng wasn't a genius, but but he wasn't a loser either. Jiang Baiwei's eyes glittered with amusement as she tilted her head. Honestly, calling the young master of a small border family a loser, that's practically a compliment where I come from. Any direct descendant of the Jiang clan could outshine him without breaking a sweat. Her sister, Jiang Lianxin, sat unmoved. Even as Baiwei's words dripped with scorn, Lianxin's expression remained serene. So you came all this way just to mock me? Don't bother. I'm useless now, nothing more than a burden who must be fed and clothed. Ridiculing someone with no worth hardly feels like an accomplishment. Baiwei's lips curved into a teasing smile. Oh, sister, you've got it all wrong. I'm not here to mock you. I'm here to thank you. If you hadn't been struck down overnight, I, Jiang Baiwei, would have been the one marrying that worthless Gu hare, Gu Ye Cheng. She leaned forward, her tone both sweet and sharp. Come on, surely you'll accept my gratitude? Lianxin raised an elegant brow. You're welcome. The corners of Baiwei's smile lifted even higher. After all, a useless person and another useless person make the perfect match, don't they? Lianxin's cool composure never wavered under her sister's taunt. Baiwei pressed on, her voice low and mocking. Deep down, Jiang Lianxin, you must be furious, aren't you? Jiang Baiwei's cheeks went pale with fury. Our family's former prodigy, the patriarch's very own daughter, is being married off to the young master of some backwater border town? A nobody who can't even compare to the lesser branches of our house. Her words rang through the courtyard, but Jiang Lianxin merely leaned against a carved stone pillar, her gaze drifting over the koi, gliding beneath the surface of the pond. She folded her arms and sighed. What's there to protest? She said quietly. I've lost my standing, my power. I can hardly walk without help now. Who am I to look down on anyone? It's more than I deserve that they don't simply cast me aside. Within days, the Gu and Jiang families had sealed the marriage agreement. The wedding was set for 1 week later. The Gu clan immediately set themselves to the preparations, feasts to plan, invitations to send, the bride's trousseau to select. And through it all, Gu Ye Cheng was far from idle. Before dawn each morning, he resumed his martial exercises, and late into the night he pored over ancient treatises, searching for any method to mend Jiang Lianxin's shattered sacred bones and restore her lost cultivation. Within the Dan Emperor Heart scripture, there are countless elixirs capable of reshaping sacred bones, like those of Jiang Lianxin. Unfortunately, nearly all of those formulas call for extremely rare ingredients, materials so precious that even the Jiang family, one of the empire's great houses, could scarcely assemble them, let alone a humble branch family like the Gus. Just when hope seemed out of reach, Gu Ye Cheng uncovered a reference to a legendary remedy, the Qixuan Fooling Pill. Born of Qingmu Dandy's genius, the Qixuan Fooling Pill ranks as a 4th-level elixir, yet its required ingredients, the principal herb, the guiding herb, and the 3 auxiliaries, are all 3rd level. Under ordinary circumstances, no one could hope to craft a 4th-level pill without at least one 4th-level medicinal material. But Qingmu Dandy's method breaks every rule. He extracts supreme potency from common roots. Even better, those 3 3rd-level herbs are far more accessible than the exotic rarities demanded by other recipes. Without a moment's hesitation, Gu Ye Cheng dispatched trusted messengers across the empire to secure them. Meanwhile, in the weeks since discovering this pill, Gu Ye Cheng's own cultivation has leapt forward. Fueled by new insight and the promise of these transformative herbs, he presses on, determined to master the Dan Emperor Heart scripture and restore Jiang Lianxin's sacred bones once and for all. In under a week, Gu Ye Cheng vaulted from True Spirit Level 1 all the way to Level 4, a 3-stage breakthrough achieved in a single stretch. Stunned, he could hardly believe his own progress. Was this really an emperor-grade cultivation technique? Then again, Emperor Xuan wasn't just any great emperor. His methods transcended the ordinary. Simply by completing the first chapter of the manual, Gu Ye Cheng's ability to absorb spiritual energy had already multiplied by dozens of times. It was impossible not to wonder how explosive his growth would become once he mastered chapters 2, 3, and 4. On top of that, Gu Ye Cheng had just laid the groundwork for the Zhuxian sword formation. The 4 swords at his disposal were hardly top tier, 1 at Spirit Refinement Level 3 and 3 at Level 2, but they were the best he could find. Yesterday, he slipped out of the city walls to put the formation to the test. The moment the four blades whirled into position and fused their power, Ye Cheng felt a surge of force so overwhelming it left him breathless. Never before had he witnessed a sword array deliver such raw, unrestrained might. As the Juxian sword formation sprang to life around him, Ye Cheng felt as though he'd seized control of the entire world. Enveloped by its power, he knew with absolute certainty that he could defeat his own father, a third-level Calamity Realm expert, without so much as breaking a sweat. The surge of strength was far greater than anything the Taishuan Sutra had granted him. On his own, armed only with the first chapter of the Taishuan Sutra, Ye Cheng might manage to hold his own against someone 1 or 2 realms above. But face even a first-level Calamity Realm adversary, and he'd be cut down in an instant. The chasm between realms was not so easily bridged, yet the Juxian sword formation completely nullified that gap. Inside its circle, his cultivation rank remained the same, but every sword technique he unleashed was infused with the formation's might, his power soaring to unprecedented heights. Ye Cheng stared at the ghostly outline of the Juxian sword formation shimmering before him. He tried to calculate how much its power might grow if he replaced those swords. 200%? 500? 800? Even 1,000%. It all came down to the quality of the 4 spirit swords anchoring the array. Right now, the formation boasted just 1 third-level spirit sword and 3 second-level blades, and already it crackled with dread power. If he could swap them out for 4th, 5th, or even 6th-level swords, the increase would be unimaginable. He closed his eyes and suppressed a wave of frustration. If only he had enough spirit stones to upgrade each of the 4 base swords to 3rd level, the Juxian sword formation would truly become unstoppable. But for now, that remained a distant dream. Chapter 4. The day of the wedding dawned bright and clear, the Gu family estate adorned with lanterns and red banners that fluttered in the spring breeze. Every corridor and courtyard was alive with bustle, servants in crisp uniforms, relatives in their finest silks, and a steady stream of honored guests arriving beneath the grand archway. Yet amid this display of wealth and hospitality, one glaring absence stood out. The Jiang family had sent only 3 representatives. An elderly uncle in solemn brocade, a silent handmaiden clutching an embroidered box, and the bride herself, Jiang Lianxin. Not a single senior member, nor the family patriarch appeared. It was clear the Jiangs regarded this marriage as little more than a formality. As Ye Cheng stood beneath the crimson wedding canopy, he caught sight of his bride for the first time. She stepped forward gracefully, every inch the picture of spotless elegance. Her gown of finest white silk embroidery whispered down the aisle, and her hair was swept up with jade hairpins that glinted in the sun. Even the gathering guests, many of whom had murmured in envy hearing of Ye Cheng's match, fell silent, struck by the extraordinary beauty before them. But look closer, and there was a wistfulness in her dark eyes, a faint tremor at the corners of her lips that spoke of hidden sorrow. Ye Cheng's heart tightened at the sight. Here was a woman admired as a fairy descended among mortals, yet shadowed by sadness. In that moment, any lingering doubts about his duty vanished. He would protect her, respect her, and if he could, bring a little joy back into those gentle eyes. As the officiant began the ceremony, the 2 families gathered, some out of genuine celebration, others from obligation, and Ye Cheng lifted Jiang Lianxin's hand with a promise. No matter what lay ahead, he would stand by her side. There was no last-minute ambush or dramatic regret. Under the wedding MC's calm instructions, Ye Cheng gently took Jiang Lianxin's frail, almost boneless hand, and together they performed the rites to honor both sets of parents, and heaven and earth. On the surface, everything proceeded without incident. Yet Ye Cheng couldn't shake a single nagging thought. Her injury was far more serious than anyone realized. He'd noticed it the moment they walked down the aisle. Each step seemed to cost her immense effort. When they knelt to pay their respects, her hand clutched tightly in his quivered uncontrollably. He could feel the tremor through his palm, not from nerves, but from piercing pain. Still, she said nothing, forcing herself to complete every ritual without complaint. When the ceremony concluded, the elders of the Jiang family rose and departed without lingering. Ye Cheng stayed by Lianshin's side, gently supporting her as they watched her relatives file out the door. She managed a wistful, self-effacing smile, her eyes following the retreating backs. A quiet loneliness hovered around her. Today's wedding had unfolded nothing like she'd hoped. She had prepared herself to stand proudly at the altar, only to find her own father absent from the celebration. Even as her body betrayed her, even now that she was crippled, she remained his daughter, and he had chosen not to stay. They say the great clans are heartless, and today, Zhang Lianshin felt that truth in her bones. The moment she ceased to serve the Zhang family's ambitions, she became a burden, less valuable even than a distant cousin of middling promise. Watching the sorrow cloud her wife's eyes, Ye Cheng slipped an arm around her shoulders and drew her close. "From now on," he whispered, "you're mine, Lianshin. The Zhang family may have cast you aside, but I never will." Zhang Lianshin lifted her head to meet his earnest gaze. A tremor of relief warmed her chest as she nestled into his embrace. Her mother had died years ago, and her father hadn't even bothered to attend this wedding. Now she felt utterly abandoned. "I only hope," she said softly, "that you won't find me too much trouble." Her health was fragile. She had neither the strength nor the skill to manage a grand household, and she relied entirely on Ye Cheng's care. Though the Gu family employed countless servants, and she had brought her own maid, no servant could remain by her side every moment. That reality left her anxious about the days to come, but in his arms, she found a flicker of hope she hadn't felt in years. After everything they'd been through, it was only natural that Ye Cheng might find her more trouble than she was worth. Zhang Lianshin couldn't stop feeling a pang of guilt whenever she thought about him. The Du family wasn't the grandest clan in Jianglin City, but it ranked among the elite, and she wasn't even a normal person by their standards. He could have made a far better match, yet he chose her, despite the whispers of her scandal that had spread across both the Han and Qin empires. He must have known every sordid detail, and still he married her. Moved by his kindness, she also felt the weight of her own shortcomings. That night, on their wedding bed, Lianshin lay trembling. Her cheeks burned, her fingers curled nervously in the folds of her robe. Every new sensation made her heart race. She'd never been so vulnerable, never faced so intimate a moment. When Ye Cheng settled beside her, she waited, breath caught in her throat. He held her gently, pressed her close, and then did nothing more. "Husband?" she whispered, voice barely audible. Lianshin glanced up at him, confusion and curiosity warring in her wide eyes. Ye Cheng's arms tightened around her, but his expression remained unreadable. The night stretched, and with it, the fragile promise of what was to come. "You're far too weak right now," Ye Cheng said softly, brushing a stray lock of hair from Zhang Lianshin's forehead. "It's not the right moment for that. We can talk about it once you've recovered." Zhang Lianshin looked up at him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Since her own family had abandoned her, no one had ever shown her genuine care. When her father or the clan elders praised her, they praised only her talent, never her as a person. But Ye Cheng, she parted her lips, wanting to protest, but her strength betrayed her. "But if I never fully recover—" "Get some rest," he murmured, smoothing her hair back. "You'll feel better soon." His words were no empty comfort. Over the past days, Ye Cheng had spared no effort to gather every rare herb needed for the 7 mysterious rejuvenating pill. Once refined, the elixir would mend her shattered sacred bones and restore her strength. Only then could they truly be together. Right now, with her cultivation stalled, she was even weaker than an average disciple. If she were to conceive in this state and give birth to a child of only average talent, would the system still grant them its rewards? Ye Cheng pressed a gentle kiss to her temple. "Sleep, Lianshin. Tomorrow we begin the next step of your recovery." With that, he settled beside her, vigilant and determined to see her healed, body and spirit alike. Of course, that was only part of the reason. The real worry was for Zhang Lianshin's health. She'd already felt lightheaded kneeling through the wedding ceremony in the grand hall. Heaven only knew how she'd fare beyond that. From the moment she became his wife, Ye Cheng had never regarded her as merely a vessel for heirs. Today's cold reception from the Zhang family, her own father conspicuously absent, only made it clearer how little they'd valued her since her so-called sacred status was revoked. Now that she belonged to the Gu household, she deserved nothing less than devotion and care. If he didn't love her, who would? And if he didn't protect his own wife, who could? There was no need to hurry the consummation. They had all the time in the world. Chapter 5. Early the next morning, Ye Cheng received word from 8th Elder Gu Quan. All the herbs he'd requested were secured. As the clan's medicine steward, Elder Gu's efficiency was unmatched, but it came at a price. Ye Cheng's modest personal fund, his only source for such purchases, had been drained completely. Although he was the eldest son of the Gu family, he did not have free reign over the clan treasury. With a wry smile, he reminded himself that filial duty sometimes meant shouldering costs personally. Carrying the herb bundles back to his courtyard, Ye Cheng set them down on his workbench and methodically began sorting. Lingxi mushrooms, lotus cores, 5-colored petals. Each ingredient was essential for pill refinement. Today, however, he would not attempt the legendary Chixuan Fooling pill. His only formal training came from the Dandy Heart Sutra, and he preferred caution over ambition on his first try. Instead, he chose a selection of more forgiving formulas, common but still effective. He laid out 1 7-pattern pill mold, 3 5-pattern molds, 3 3-pattern molds. "No pill is useless," he murmured, recalling his teacher's words. Every design corresponded to a specific energy flow and therapeutic effect. Ye Cheng adjusted his gauze mask, struck the furnace flint, and stoked the charcoal until the flames glowed blue. First came the precise incantations. He raised his right hand, channeling his spiritual power into the crucible. The herbs inside hissed and steamed, turning a soft amber. He counted each stir, each breath, ensuring that the vital qi wove evenly through the concoction. After exactly 3 minutes, he poured the molten slurry into the 7-pattern mold. Steeling himself, he moved on to the 5 and 3-pattern molds, repeating the incantations with unwavering focus. Sweat beaded at his temples, but his movements were sure and measured. Finally, he leaned back and watched as the newly formed pellets solidified into smooth, pale spheres. These were Huiyuan pills, second-grade recovery pills renowned throughout the cultivation world for their steady, reliable healing. Simple to make, yet indispensable to any disciple's medicine chest. As he packed them into their silk pouches, Ye Cheng allowed himself a rare smile. Today's success was small, but it was his, and every journey, no matter how grand, began with a single, well-crafted pill. Qingmu Dandi's alchemical methods are truly extraordinary. I've watched countless pill refiners at work, but never anyone who approaches it like him. Every concoction he produces, even his most basic remedies, reaches the Danwen grade. Maintaining that kind of success rate is beyond the reach of a 4th-grade Dan King. It's on par with the best in the 5th and 6th grades. In our world, alchemists are ranked just like pills, from 1st grade up to 9th. A 4th-grade alchemist earns the title of Dan King, a status comparable to a king-level martial lord, sometimes even more revered. Above him stand the 5th-grade Dan Emperor, the 6th-grade Dan Zun, and ultimately the 7th-grade Dan Wusheng, each commanding ever higher authority. Yet no matter how lofty their cultivation, an alchemist of equal grade will always occupy a more exalted position. So far, I, Ye Cheng, have refined a 2nd-grade elixir without difficulty. I even tested a 3rd-grade formula, and again felt no real challenge. Now, having secured the rare ingredients for the legendary 7 mysterious rejuvenation pills, I'm ready to begin my greatest trial yet. I arrange the luminescent herbs around the crucible, each petal shimmering like moonlight. Carefully, I ignite the alchemical flame, coaxing it to dance between azure and violet, exactly as the ancient scroll prescribes. Heart steady, mind clear, I begin the meticulous cycle of stirring and heating. Degree by degree, I adjust the fire's intensity, listening to the subtle hiss and pop of the herbs as they submit to transformation. Though every novice fears the jump to a new pill grade, I remain unfazed. My NDS move with practiced confidence, my senses attuned to each chemical whisper. As the final catalyst dissolves into the molten slurry and the mixture glows with pearlescent light, I know the moment of truth has arrived. If all goes well, these 7 mysterious rejuvenation pills will not only mark my ascent into true mastery, they'll alter the fate of whoever ingests them. I hold my breath, waiting for the delicate balance between success and failure to tip. In this crucible, ambition and skill collide, and only the most refined will emerge victorious. Ye Cheng's mind trembled under the strain as he completed the final step of his 4th grade elixir. He could feel his spirit reserves teetering on the brink of exhaustion. Only his heritage as a time traveler, along with the immense spiritual power granted by the Taishuan Sutra, allowed him to attempt what only the Pill King could normally achieve. He reminded himself of the recipe one last time: suyuan grass, honeysuckle, xuanling root. With steady hands, Ye Cheng dropped each ingredient into the furnace. He wove his mental power through the stoking flames, calibrating every flicker of heat with laser-like focus. There was no room for error. This was his only supply of rare herbs. An hour passed in suffocating silence, broken only by the crackle of embers. Finally, the fire subsided, and Ye Cheng exhaled a long, tense breath. He opened the furnace tray and found 4 pills resting on the blackened coals. 2 high-grade 4th-level elixirs, 1 mid-grade, and 1 low-grade lacking the full pill pattern. Refining a 4th-stage pill had always been the Pill King's domain, and though these results weren't perfect, they marked a breakthrough. Ye Cheng allowed himself a small, triumphant smile. He had done it. Although he was disappointed that no pill pattern had formed, Ye Cheng knew when he'd reached the limit of his skill. After refining that furnace of Qishuan fooling pills, his mind felt battered and exhausted. He collapsed onto the floor, gasping for breath, then forced himself to his feet and made his way back to his room. By the time he arrived, Zhang Lianxin had just woken. With the maid's help, she stood unsteadily, brushing sleep from her eyes. Spotting Ye Cheng's weary expression, she hurried over. "Ye Cheng, what have you been doing? You look completely drained." He gave a quick gesture for the maid to step outside and then guided Zhang Lianxin into the adjoining hall. Once the door was closed, he turned to her, voice quiet but firm. "Shiner, do you want vengeance?" Instead of immediately handing over the newly refined elixir, he let the question hang between them. "Revenge?" Zhang Lianxin's brow tightened. She knew exactly what he meant. Revenge on the Kanglan Holy Land, on Mu Yanran, and on that powerful protector who had humiliated her so cruelly. She was no saint. Her hatred was a wound she would carry for the rest of her life. Yet she also understood how perilous and uncertain the path of retribution could be. She inhaled slowly, weighing her fury against the dangers that lay ahead. Zhang Lianxin stared at Ye Cheng in disbelief. Once the revered saint of Kanglan Holy Land, she was now broken and utterly helpless. How could she possibly strike back in this state? "This," Ye Cheng said, removing a small jade vial from his satchel, "is the 7 mysterious spiritual restoration pill. 1 dose, and it will reshape the damaged spirit bones in your body." Zhang Lianxin's brows shot up. A member of the prestigious Zhang family, renowned across the Han and Qin dynasties, she had studied every major elixir ever recorded, yet she had never even heard of this pill. Her condition wasn't a simple sprain or fracture. Her spirit bones had been shattered so thoroughly that even the famed Pill King had failed to heal her. Still, she hesitated only for a moment before accepting the jade vial from Ye Cheng's outstretched hand. Whether this pill truly worked or not, it was his intention, and that, she decided, was reason enough to try. She lifted the tiny, pearl-like pill to her lips. Later, lying against her silken pillows, Zhang Lianxin watched Ye Cheng pacing by the window. He'd risen before dawn, journeyed across jagged mountain trails, and returned now, panting and exhausted. It had to be the cost of refining that extraordinary pill. Even if it failed, she thought, at least it was his wholehearted effort. And for the first time since her fall, a spark of hope flickered in her chest. Zhang Lianxin had long since given up hope, yet when she swallowed the Qishuan fooling pill, a warm, invigorating energy flooded her veins and bones. Comfort unlike anything she'd ever known spread through her body, and as the minutes passed, she sensed her shattered spirit bones beginning to reform, piece by piece. "Husband, this pill," she whispered, astonishment coloring her tone. She'd believed even the legendary king of pills couldn't mend her broken spirit bones. And yet, here she was, feeling them knitting themselves back together after just 1 dose. "Don't speak," Ye Cheng said gently, helping her to the bed. "Channel your energy. Let the medicine guide you." Although confusion and wonder churned in her mind, Zhang Lianshan forced them aside. She closed her eyes and focused, drawing on the foundation of the Zhang family's primary cultivation technique. Warmth radiated through every fiber of her being as she complied with his instructions. Half a day later, once Zhang Lianshan's aura had steadied, Ye Cheng presented her with the remaining 7 mysterious, rejuvenating pills. One by one, she swallowed them under his watchful gaze. The combined effect was astonishing. With each pill, her broken spirit bones healed further, her cultivation veins reopened, and her strength returned in waves. By nightfall, Zhang Lianshan's once ruined body had been completely restored. She opened her eyes to find Ye Cheng beside her, relief and pride shining in his expression. Though exhausted, she managed a grateful smile. This miraculous recovery would change everything, for her and for them both. A day passed in the blink of an eye. Ye Cheng never left Zhang Lianshan's side. Early that morning, a soft moan escaped her lips, and Zhang Lianshan's eyelids fluttered open. She blinked against the dim light and found Ye Cheng sitting vigil beside her bed. "Husband," she whispered, relief flooding her face. Zhang Lianshan pressed a hand to her belly, awed by the surge of energy within. Her spirit bones had been reforged, and her cultivation had leapt to the first tribulation realm. Overcome with joy, she threw her arms around Ye Cheng and kissed him with all the gratitude she couldn't put into words. Their embrace lasted until exhaustion finally claimed them both. When dawn came, Ye Cheng woke, feeling as though his muscles had turned to water. He groaned, half opening his eyes to see Zhang Lianshan curled against his chest, her face alight with happiness. He rubbed his temples and sighed. "I really must carve out some holy supreme bone essence, otherwise I'm going to go mad." Zhang Lianshan stirred at his words, blinking sleep from her eyes. "My husband, your holy supreme bone essence is far too potent." Her cheeks heated as she realized what she'd said. "Holy bone? No, that's not right. What I have is a spirit bone, not a holy bone." Ye Cheng paused, one brow arched. "Spirit bone?" He propped himself on an elbow and looked down at her. "Did you say spirit bone?" She nodded, suddenly shy. "Yes, my spirit bone was shattered, but you restored it. My strength, it's all thanks to you." Ye Cheng's grave expression softened into a wry smile. "Well, let's make sure you get plenty of rest. Spirit bone or holy bone, I'm not letting you overdo it again." He kissed her forehead, and for a moment they simply held each other, savoring the calm after the storm. Ye Cheng's voice trembled with disbelief. "How could a mere spirit bone inflict all this suffering on me? No, my wife, it isn't just any spirit bone in your body. You carry the true holy bone, the Xuanbing holy bone." Chapter 6, Zhang Lianshan's eyes widened. "A holy bone? The Xuanbing holy bone? No, you must be mistaken, Ye Cheng. How could the bone in my body be?" Spiritual bones and holy bones were worlds apart. Zhang Lianshan had heard every legend. Those born with holy bones became peerless geniuses, coveted by the divine court itself. The very idea that she, an inconspicuous young woman from a minor clan, might possess one felt impossible. And yet, as she spoke, a seed of doubt took root. She recalled the 7 mysterious rejuvenation pills Ye Cheng had produced yesterday, the same elixirs that had miraculously mended her shattered spiritual bone. If anyone else claimed such power, she would have laughed the notion away. But these pills had come from him, Ye Cheng, whom she'd always regarded as a mere minor court gentleman. Ordinary men simply did not perform miracles. Her heart pounded as she met his steady gaze. In that instant, all her uncertainties crumbled. He was no longer just the unassuming young master of a small clan. He had healed her impossible injury, and now he dared to name the rarest of bones within her. Swallowing hard, Zhang Lianshan whispered, "If what you say is true, how can we be certain?" Ye Cheng offered a faint, confident smile. "Leave it to me. I know someone who can tell us exactly what lies within." As his words settled over her, Zhang Lianshan felt a thrill of anticipation and fear for the revelations that were to come. Zhang Lianshan didn't press him for details. She never questioned where the 7 mysterious rejuvenating pills had come from, or why Ye Cheng was so certain the artifact in her body was a holy bone, not merely a spiritual bone. If he chose to share his reasons, she trusted he would. If he remained silent, she accepted that he had his reasons. "My wife," Ye Cheng teased, a fond smile tugging at his lips, "now that your holy bone has been fully reshaped, You're destined to be our future empress. Dare you still look down on me, a mere young master of a modest household?" With a swift movement, born of the years she'd spent mastering her body, Zhang Lianxin slipped free of his embrace and flipped him atop the silken bed, pressing his shoulders into the plush mattress. Brilliant lamplight danced in her eyes as she stared down at him. "My husband," she said softly, "I know you're only teasing, but remember this. Everything I have, from my strength to my very life, comes from you. Whether I rise to become a heavenly venerable or an empress, I will always be your woman, your wife." Her natural reserve melted away entirely in that moment. She leaned close, her voice dropping to a fierce whisper. "If I truly do possess the holy bone, then from now on I will protect you with my life. I will be your sword, and I will strike down anyone you command me to kill." In those few simple words lay the depth of Zhang Lianxin's love and unwavering loyalty to Ye Cheng. In the soft dawn light, Ye Cheng stirred as Zhang Lianxin leaned over him, her warm body pressing insistently against his. He flashed her a lazy grin. "My wife, it's still early. How about another round?" Zhang Lianxin's playful smile widened. She gave him a gentle push, her intention unmistakable. And so their battle resumed, each thrust and counter-thrust punctuated by laughter, until the sun stood high in the sky. Only then did they finally collapse in a tangle of limbs and satisfied sighs. An hour later, Ye Cheng stretched and propped himself on one elbow. "Shiner," he said with mock severity, "I've got energy to spare. Shall we spar 300 more times?" She rolled onto her back, brushing a lock of hair from her face and arching an eyebrow. 300? We're both exhausted. I don't mind, but you look like you've been through a war. 3 dark stress lines popped up above Ye Cheng's brow. Exhausted? When I unleash my supreme bone holy body, you'll see exactly why I need this. No rest, no mercy. I'm talking about a real fight. Moments later, they stood facing each other in the training courtyard. "Jian," Lianxin breathed out in steady rhythm, the aura of her holy body glimmering faintly around her. Perfect, for Ye Cheng's purposes. He needed to measure his strength against a genuine Tribulation Realm opponent. True Spirit Realm versus Tribulation Realm. He wasn't being arrogant, he was supremely confident. Emperor-grade techniques and the legendary Juxian sword formation had brought him this far. Even at the 4th level of True Spirit, he knew ordinary Tribulation cultivators would crumble long before him. Now, it was time to prove it. A serious match? "All right, husband. Would you like me to cap my cultivation at the 4th level of True Spirit?" After her holy body was remodeled, Zhang Lianxin's confidence soared. It wasn't that she underestimated Ye Cheng out of spite. She simply had never met anyone in her realm who could endure 10 exchanges with her. Even the Saint of Kanglan Holy Land fell in just 5 moves. By contrast, Ye Cheng was only at the 4th level of True Spirit, far below her own power. To her, dialing her strength back to that level felt like bullying him. Ye Cheng's chest tightened at her words. He'd long accepted that Lianxin was prodigiously talented, but being dismissed like this stung. Today, he decided, he would show her just how strong he'd become. "No, you don't need to hold back in this next bout," he said firmly. Zhang Lianxin tilted her head, a playful glint in her eyes. "Even at 4th level True Spirit, you might still find I'm too much for you." Though she had only entered the 1st level of the Tribulation Realm, her strength rivaled that of Ye Cheng's father, Gu Yuan. After all, she was a peerless genius born with holy bones, no small feat in their world. Ye Cheng inhaled deeply, his face settling into a mask of resolve. It wasn't hard for him to surge ahead by 3 or even 4 cultivation levels, but against someone like Zhang Lianxin, a peerless genius blessed with holy bones, mere advancement wouldn't be enough. "Juxian sword formation, deploy," he commanded. At once, 4 ethereal swords shot from his storage pouch, embedding themselves at the courtyard's 4 corners. In an instant, the world around them vanished, replaced by an endless expanse of white. Immortal execution sword formation, complete. A servant bowed sharply. "Master Gu, please be careful." With a casual flourish, Ye Cheng summoned a gleaming magic sword into his hand. Without hesitation, he lunged forward. 3 cloud-breaking swords. This was the Gu family's signature killing technique. Though normally classified as a low-level heavenly grade style, When blessed by the Zhuxian formation, its raw power far exceeded any ordinary heavenly grade attack. The three spectral arcs of light tore through the air toward Zhang Lianxin. Across from him, Zhang Lianxin's expression darkened, his eyes narrowing as he braced himself for the onslaught. The clash between these two prodigies was about to reach its most perilous moment. Zhang Lianxin realized with a jolt that she'd badly underestimated her husband, more than she'd ever have admitted. Now, encapsulated by the courtyard's shimmering light barrier, she sensed its true strength, a true spirit level 4 formation. Not long ago, she would have laughed at such a defense. She'd faced level 4 cultivators single-handedly, cleaving through their attacks as if they were nothing more than wind. She'd even stood still and let them strike her, certain they couldn't leave so much as a scratch. But standing opposite Ye Cheng, watching the deadly precision of his blade, she felt an unfamiliar chill of apprehension. A true spirit level 4 swordsmanship threatening her? The idea was almost laughable. And yet, here she was, every nerve on edge. She squared her shoulders, refusing to let doubt take hold. Fingers tightening around her sword's hilt, Zhang Lianxin drew a steadying breath and lifted her blade to meet his. The clash was inevitable, and this time she knew she couldn't afford to underestimate him. Chapter 7 Clang. The clash of steel rang out sharply. Zhang Lianxin staggered back, pain flashing across her face. But for Ye Cheng, this was only the opening move. With the fury of a gathering storm, his longsword unleashed a relentless barrage, each strike precise, each parry calculated. In the blink of an eyelash, his assault reached its crescendo. Half an incensed stick's time later, Ye Cheng's blade rested lightly against Zhang Lianxin's fair throat. She froze, eyes wide with shock. I've lost. How could she, Zhang Lianxin, undefeated among her peers, fall to someone so many cultivation realms beneath her? She, who had once dispatched the Kanglan Holy Land's Saintess with a mere 5 sword strokes, now knelt defeated. A sudden doubt flickered through her mind. Had her strength waned? The thought vanished as quickly as it came. No, this was not her failing. It was his power. My husband is far too strong. Zhang Lianxin's heart pounded. Useless. She found herself repeating the word under her breath, recalling her sister Zhang Baiwei's scorn. Is this the worthless young master everyone speaks of, the so-called waste heir of a minor family? Silently, she swallowed her pride and met Ye Cheng's steady gaze. In that instant, she understood. No realm gap could withstand true talent. And by her side stood a man whose strength transcended every expectation. Chapter 7 The Awakening. Resolve. Heh! If Zhang Baiwei ever discovered that the useless wretch she so sneeringly dismissed would one day overshadow her completely, what would she say? How fortunate Zhang Baiwei has been, to think she alone was accepted into the Gu family, while I stood outside their gates. Little does she know, I, Ye Cheng, am the true peerless genius, an existence far more formidable than she could ever imagine. The more she gloats now, the deeper her future regret will run. And as for Zhang Lianxin, she was luckier still. By awakening the earth spirit vein within her, she ensured that her place by my side and in my heart was never in doubt. Without that rare spirit body, she might have been swept away by someone else entirely. From this day forward, I devote myself wholly to cultivation. On the vast Tianquan continent, strength is the only language that earns respect. I must grow more powerful, not only to exact vengeance on Zhang Baiwei for the cruelties she's inflicted, but also to shield Lianxin from any who would exploit or abandon her again. Talent alone, after all, is empty promise. Lianxin's holy bones brim with potential. Given time and proper guidance, she could ascend to emperor rank. Yet she was cast aside, left to languish until I intervened. If not for me, her radiant future might never have ignited. So let the heavens bear witness. I, Ye Cheng, will rise, surpassing every expectation, crushing every obstacle, and carving a path of vengeance and honor for the woman I cherish. Chapter Correction. The divine bones in Zhang Lianxin's body were utterly beyond reshaping. The Tianquan continent was simply too vast. Nanchuan Divine Province alone spanned thousands of domains, each kingdom or sect brimming with countless prodigies. Yet how many of them ultimately ascend to the exalted Tianzun Emperor realm? Ye Cheng was still far from that pinnacle. In truth, he was barely strong enough to conceal the forbidden techniques granted by his mysterious system, let alone share them with his own household. If those arts were ever exposed, the trouble would be unthinkable. So, beside his cultivation sessions, Ye Cheng devoted himself to a very different kind of practice. Night after night, the courtyard echoed with laughter, music, and dance, as he and Zhang Lianxin pursued a single goal, forging a new generation blessed with extraordinary heritage. To strengthen our future, he often said, we must ensure our bloodline grows ever mightier. At last, their efforts bore fruit. One morning, Ye Cheng awoke to the system's cheerful chime. Ding! Congratulations to the host. Zhang Lianxin is now pregnant. Ye Cheng allowed himself a rare, relieved smile. With Zhang Lianxin carrying his heir and his own innate gifts, an orange grade 3 burning flame spirit body and a purple grade 6 Saint Empress body, he felt the first true stirrings of hope for the future. Ye Cheng let out a whoop of triumph. Orange tear, he shouted, watching the swirls of aura around his newborn son. Clearly, the boy was destined to become a heavenly venerable. Even though it wasn't a golden tier aura, Ye Cheng couldn't have been more satisfied. After all, his wife, Zhang Lianxin, was a true prodigy in cultivation, while he'd only ever been a green tier martial genius. It was entirely thanks to her talent that their child could radiate such extraordinary potential. No sooner had the thought crossed his mind than a clear chime echoed in his consciousness. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining the green fire pill body, golden grade 1. Golden tier? Ye Cheng stared at the notification in disbelief. Not only had he sired a son with heavenly venerable blood, but he'd also unlocked a golden qualification himself. Details bloomed before his eyes. Green fire pill body, alchemy saint physique, plus 200% pill refining success rate, greatly increased chance to craft Danwen grade pills. Innate possession of the green lotus heartfire, usable in both alchemy and combat. A thrill of pride rushed through him, followed by a flicker of disappointment. A pill physique, of all things, he muttered. If only it had been a golden martial physique. Still, a golden tier qualification was nothing to scoff at. Grinning, Ye Cheng settled back and focused on his infant son, his greatest inheritance and the living promise of a heavenly venerable future. At least it was a golden grade qualification. Ye Cheng felt a pang of disappointment fade the moment he noticed another attribute column materializing beneath his unborn child's data. Double yolk egg? Twins? His heart skipped. Sure enough, 2 eggs were forming side by side. Twins. Unnamed child number 1. Gender, female. Innate fate, purple sky eclipse thunder body, golden grade 9. Ye Cheng stared astonished. Golden grade 9? The very highest tier of golden qualifications, almost as powerful as a red qualification. An 8-level supreme divine physique that outstripped even his mother's first-tier golden Xuan Shui holy body. If that rank could aspire to crack into the great emperor realm, then a golden 9, if it never fell, would be destined to become a great emperor, and might even pierce beyond the emperor realm. Ye Cheng, who had been clouded with gloom over the return of his old Dan Dao physique, was suddenly ecstatic. His body trembled with excitement as one thought raced through his mind. Ye Cheng stared at the system notification in disbelief. He'd just watched the first disciple of the Orange Third Qualification channel, a golden fate back to himself. Yet his own upgrade felt even more surreal. Ding! Congratulations, host, on obtaining the Chaos Sword Body, Red 8th Qualification. Chaos Sword Body, Supreme Sword Immortal Flesh. Cultivation Speed, plus 2,000%. Sword Technique Comprehension Speed, 1,000%. Sword Technique Power, 1,000%. Sword Realm Comprehension Speed, plus 1,000%. All bonuses will further amplify as the host's realm advances. Ye Cheng went completely numb. Red Innate Fate? That had to be the top tier. If he remembered correctly, red was the highest color the system could display. There wasn't anything above it. In other words, he just reached the absolute ceiling of the system's qualifications. And now he possessed both the Chaos Sword Body and the Zhuxian Sword Formation. Just imagining the destructive power he could unleash with those two combined sent a thrill of anticipation through him. Suddenly, a warmth filled him, and he found himself murmuring, "My dear daughter, you really are my good girl. I've been working myself ragged these past few days, nearly to the point of collapse." He couldn't help but smile at the thought. Whatever trials he'd faced so far were already paying off in ways he'd never dared imagine. It's all worth it. every sacrifice, every struggle. They had one son and one daughter. Their son had already earned the rank of venerable, and their daughter was undeniably destined to sit on the throne one day. Ye Cheng couldn't have been happier. In fact, he was already anticipating their third child. With his own red grade, 8th stage Chaos Sword physique, complemented by Zhang Lianxin's gold grade, 1st level Holy physique, he'd gone from being a liability to the true powerhouse in the family's legacy. Ye Cheng could hardly wait to see what marvel their next child would be. Perhaps a prodigy surpassing even the red grade? Chapter 8, Guyunxi. Gu Qingchen. 3 months had passed, and as Zhang Lianxin's due date drew near, Ye Cheng had already chosen perfect names for their twins. The little girl would be called Guyunxi, and her younger brother Gu Qingchen. Yunxi as the elder sister, Qingchen as the younger brother, harmonious and fitting in every way. In those same 3 months, Ye Cheng himself underwent a transformation. Empowered by the legendary Chao sword body, his cultivation advanced at an almost terrifying pace. In the blink of a season, he soared from the 4th level of the True Spirit stage all the way to the 9th, just one step shy of breaking into the Tribulation realm. Such rapid progress was nearly unheard of. Even Zhang Lianxin, with her mysterious ice holy bone, found herself trailing behind. Over the same period, she had only managed to ascend 2 levels, rising from the 1st to the 3rd level of the Tribulation realm. Higher realms were indeed more difficult to conquer, but Ye Cheng's leap was simply staggering. Even she couldn't help feeling a twinge of awe and a hint of envy at his astonishing speed. Zhang Lianxin's cultivation speed was already formidable, but next to her husband, Ye Cheng, it felt the work of a novice. Try as she might, a flicker of frustration always rose in her chest. Thankfully, he was the only one who could truly push her to excel. Xianxia, Ye Cheng announced one afternoon, finishing his meditation. Once I break through to the Calamity Realm, I'm heading straight for the 10,000 Demons Sea. His words were confident, but in truth, their Gu clan's resources were stretched to the limit. As he climbed higher, clan medicines and spirit stones that once sufficed now barely touched the surface of his needs. The Gu family was, after all, little more than a modest city clan. They simply couldn't bankroll the kind of expenditure his cultivation demanded. If Zhang Lianxin remained with her own Jiang family, her progress would undoubtedly be faster too. Another concern weighed on her mind. The baby was due soon. She needed to gather enough rare herbs and elixirs for both the prenatal medicinal baths and the postnatal tonics. If their child could train with imperial-grade elixirs and inherit their combined talents, well, such a prodigy would be the stuff of legends. Before this, they'd been too weak to travel far from home. Now, with Ye Cheng on the verge of breaking into the Calamity Realm, their power had already soared beyond imagination. As for exactly how strong he'd become, Ye Cheng himself wasn't yet sure. But one thing was certain. The world beyond their mountain stronghold would never be the same once he unleashed his true strength. No one truly understands his own strength until he tests it against someone of equal caliber. Over the past 3 months, besides pouring every moment into his cultivation, Ye Cheng never once abandoned his alchemical work. Despite being forced to use the clan's inferior medicinal materials, his innate Qinghuo Dan physique allowed him to refine nearly every concoction up to Danwen grade. The pills he produced easily sold for a hefty sum of spirit stones. Well, Xianxia is with child, so it's not safe for her to travel, Ye Cheng said with a soft sigh. If she weren't pregnant, I'd love to take her with me on my next journey. Zhang Lianxin, whom he affectionately called Xianxia, smiled and placed a hand over her slightly rounded belly. Joy shone in her eyes at the thought of their growing family. Ye Cheng wrapped his arms around her shoulders and gently patted her back. Don't worry, he murmured. There'll be plenty of time for adventures once our 2 little ones arrive. Just 1 week later, Ye Cheng shattered the barrier into the Tribulation realm. For someone blessed with a Chaos sword body, the threshold to that realm was less a wall than a shifting breeze, and so he ascended effortlessly, as though he'd been born to it. Watching him achieve this milestone, Zhang Lianxin couldn't help but feel a swell of pride, and just a touch of envy. The Tribulation realm already ranks among the most elite in both the Han and Qin empires. Once you enter it, you face 9 successive thunder tribulations, each more harrowing than the last. Survive one storm, and your power leaps forward. Perish, and the thunder itself will claim your life. Because of that mortal risk, few cultivators in the tribulation realm dare to attempt a breakthrough until they are absolutely certain of success. This is precisely why it's called the tribulation realm. Conquer all 9 tribulations, and you ascend into the first tier of the king realm, the Xuanwang realm. A Xuanwang is a true regional sovereign, free to roam the world at will, to found a sect, and to serve as its master. Before embarking on this perilous path, Ye Cheng informed his father, Gu Yuan. His father neither forbade nor discouraged him. Ye Cheng had never hidden the truth of his cultivation, so Gu Yuan already knew exactly where his son stood, and what dangers lay ahead. Ye Cheng never explained the source of his sudden breakthrough. He only said that he'd somehow awakened a rare talent overnight. It wasn't that he was unwilling to share. Rather, it was tied to the mysterious workings of his personal system, a secret he vowed never to reveal, not even to Zhang Lianxin. It had nothing to do with distrust. This was simply the one truth he could not afford to expose. The Wanyao Sea lies to the south of the Han Qin Empire, its storm-lashed waters brushing the coastlines of 7 or 8 neighboring realms, the Han Qin Empire among them. In its deeper reaches, monstrous creatures of kingly power prowl, enough to deter even the bravest human warrior kings from venturing too far. By contrast, the shallower waters teem with far fewer threats, earning that stretch the reputation of a frontier haven for countless adventurers. Trading posts and pirate dens alike have sprung up along its shores, none more famous than Haiyu Island, the nearest of those outposts to the Han Qin heartland. And it was here, on this bustling island of merchants and mercenaries, that Ye Cheng planned to make his next move. Ye Cheng streaked above the cobalt sea, his figure cutting a swift, silent arc through the sky. Below him, cultivators and adventurers paused in their tracks, jaws dropping at the impossible sight. "He's flying, like a king-rank warrior," someone gasped. A ripple of envy passed through the crowd. To soar unaided was the hallmark of a genuine king-rank powerhouse, someone who could bend heaven and earth to his will. What no one realized was that Ye Cheng wasn't a king-rank cultivator at all. His effortless flight owed everything to the Zhuxian sword formation, a deadly array of spirit blades he controlled as its true master. As long as the formation remained active, it carried him through the air exactly as a top-tier warrior would, but at a steep cost. Every moment aloft drained his spiritual reserves in a torrent. Still, Ye Cheng showed no sign of strain. His eyes were focused, his posture calm and assured. The Zhuxian sword formation pulsed around him like an invisible dragon's wings, propelling him onward. To onlookers, he was the embodiment of supreme strength. Only he knew how tenuous his advantage really was. Yet for now, as the wind whipped past and the sea gleamed beneath him, he would enjoy their awe and keep pressing forward. Ye Cheng had always been too lazy to bother with the Chamber of Commerce's sea vessels. Slow, inconvenient, and hardly worth the trouble. Whenever his spiritual power ran low, he could simply land somewhere quiet and rest for a day or two before continuing his journey. Roar! A thunderous bellow ripped through the sky. Ye Cheng looked up just in time to see a massive creature hurtling toward him from the horizon, where sea met sky. Its enormous form cleaved through the air with terrifying speed. "A king-level monster," he murmured, eyes widening. In these shallow coastal waters, such predators were almost mythical. The chance of encountering one here was about as likely as winning a lottery back on Earth, a lottery he'd bought in China no less. Yet there it was, charging straight at him. He felt no fear, only exhilaration. "Excellent timing," he whispered, grinning as he prepared to meet the beast head-on. For the past few days, Ye Cheng had encountered countless demonic beasts on his journey. Almost all of them lingered at the true spirit realm. Only a rare few had even reached the tribulation realm. He'd longed for an opportunity to test his own strength against a genuine Xuanwang-level powerhouse, to see where he truly stood. Until now, no worthy opponent had appeared. But this time, it seemed the perfect target had finally revealed itself. Chapter 9. Ye Cheng's heart dropped as the towering form of the Demon King drew nearer over the shallow waters. He had a clear view now. This wasn't a random patrol. The Demon King was in hot pursuit of a group of human monks, their saffron robes flapping wildly in the wind. Gods above, what rotten luck! A Demon King-level fiend in the shallow sea. Ye Cheng swore under his breath. Ahead of him, a petite young woman in flowing green garb was brandishing a slender silver sword with trembling hands. Her face was pale, eyes wide with terror as the Demon King closed the distance. She and her companions, dozens of wide-eyed novices, were clearly unprepared for a beast of this magnitude. That girl in green was Huang Yingying, an inner disciple of Chenshin Pavilion. At True Spirit 4th level, she was among the stronger disciples of the sect. But even that wasn't enough against a Demon King. Chenshin Pavilion was the largest sect in these parts, its master a half-step King Realm powerhouse. Today's outing was meant to be a routine field exercise. The Pavilion Master had dispatched over 10 teams in separate parties, each escorted by 2 or 3 elders at the robbery realm to ensure safety. Yet here they were, nearly defenseless when the Demon King struck. Huang Yingying's grip tightened on her sword hilt. She took a shaky step forward, trying to rally the terrified novices around her, only to recoil when the beast let out a thunderous roar. Even the elders in this group, seasoned cultivators though they were, looked startled. A few tried to form a defensive formation, but the Demon King's speed was terrifying. In moments, it would be upon them. Ye Cheng felt the surge of power emanating from the fiend. The water around its webbed feet churned like a storm. He knew that if he didn't act, everyone here would be slaughtered. He took a deep breath and prepared to intervene, knowing full well that challenging a Demon King was no small feat. But looking at Huang Yingying's desperate eyes and the helpless novices clinging to her robes, he steeled himself. He would not let this sect's disciples perish in the shallow sea. With a fierce cry, Ye Cheng leapt forward, ready to face the Demon King, no matter the cost. Under the Elder's protection, Ye Cheng had been confident the shallow seas posed no real threat, until a king-level monster, a creature thought impossible this close to shore, burst from the depths. Moments before, 2 Calamity Realm elders had thrown themselves at the beast, hoping to stall it long enough for their disciples to escape. Their sacrifice was in vain. With a single, thunderous swipe of its claw, the monster shattered their defenses. Before anyone could even cry out, the 2 venerable cultivators were torn apart, their life forces scattering like a crimson mist. The gap between the Calamity Realm and a king-level adversary was enormous. Not even the master of the Dust Heart Pavilion could have withstood such overwhelming power. As the disciples, Huang Yingying among them, turned and fled, panic surging through their veins, Ye Cheng felt his heart sink. In that moment, hope seemed as fragile as the blood mist that hung in the air. Woo, woo, I've only just crossed the inner gate. I haven't even had a chance to prove myself. I don't want to die. Alas, scatter. Whatever you do, just run for your lives. A few desperate disciples bolted in every direction, their voices echoing through the courtyard. But Elder Yang, the only senior left, paused. He let out a resigned sigh, planted his feet, and turned to face the charging Demon King instead of fleeing. Elder Yang, no! A chorus of alarmed cries rose from the disciples of Chenshin Pavilion. Elder Yang was adored by everyone in the sect, inner gate or outer gate. No one was ever turned away when they sought his guidance. Now, seeing him stride toward certain death just to buy them time, tears welled in their eyes. It's so moving, someone whispered. From the rear came a calm, measured voice, Ye Cheng's. There was no mockery in it. The scene genuinely stirred him. Nobody wished to die, and Elder Yang was no exception. Yet for his disciples' sake, he chose to stand his ground. As Ye Cheng's words faded, a beam of pure white light tore through the air. It was the flash of a sword, so brilliant it seemed to slice open the void itself, and it shot straight at the Demon King. The Demon King's massive form froze as it sensed the looming threat. With a roar, it swung its hulking arms up in a desperate attempt to deflect the blow, but it was far too late. Shh! Ye Cheng's sword sliced through the air like a hot blade through silk. Light erupted along its length, cleaving the Demon King cleanly in two. A churning furrow split the sea behind it, and blood surged like scarlet tidewater. In an instant, the Xuanwang-level beast lay dead, its enormous carcass drifting apart. Elder Yang, Huang Yingying, and every disciple of the Chenshin Pavilion gaped in horrified silence. A true demon king, an apex predator on par with a human king-class warrior, slain in a single strike, it was unthinkable. Their eyes jerked away from the grisly spectacle and rose, almost in unison, to the young man hovering above the waves. Clad in flowing white robes, he held his sword aloft, his breath steady despite the violence he'd just unleashed. Not a hair on his silken hairdo stirred, and no drop of his pristine garment even sullied the saltwater spray. "He's a king-class warrior," someone whispered. "A king-class warrior," Elder Yang echoed under his breath, voice trembling. Huang Yingying mustered the courage to look more closely. Ye Cheng's features were youthful, perhaps even younger than their own, yet his composure, his power, left no doubt. This boy in white had just cut down a demon king as though it were no more than a straw dummy. And in that awestruck moment, everyone realized they were witnessing something utterly extraordinary. Ye Cheng hovered above the sea, his gaze fixed on the fallen demon king at his feet. "What kind of monster is this?" he muttered to himself, incredulous. 20 years old and already a Xuanwang-level demon king, a level even many veteran cultivators never attain. Ignoring the stunned expressions on Elder Yang's face and the wide-eyed disciples of Chengxin Pavilion, Ye Cheng descended until he stood ankle-deep in the surf. With a calm motion, he drew his storage bag and eased the massive corpse inside. The bag, generous by any standard, groaned under the demon king's bulk, its seams straining as heaps of glittering treasures threatened to spill out. Even at a glance, Ye Cheng knew these riches would fetch a fortune in spirit stones. But the true shock wasn't the loot, it was his own power. He had always assumed he was merely approaching the early Xuanwang stage, yet in that brief duel, his strength had surged far beyond his expectations. Not even an early-stage Xuanwang cultivator could hope to parry his blade. "Chaos Sword Body," he whispered, pressing a hand to his chest. "I've underestimated you." At last, Elder Yang and the Chengxin Pavilion disciples blinked themselves back to reality. Their initial disbelief gave way to awe, and for some, a touch of envy. The young man before them, no older than 20, had just slain a demon king single-handedly, and in doing so, he'd revealed a power that none present could deny. Elder Yang dropped to one knee, clasping his fists in salute. "Thank you, Senior. I'm eternally grateful for your help." Huang Yingying and the other Chengxin Pavilion disciples echoed his words, their voices trembling with relief. Just moments ago, they had been certain they were about to die. Today's fortune, they realized, had been both cruel and merciful. Cruel in nearly sealing their fate, and merciful in sending a sovereign-level cultivator to deliver them. They owed their lives to this mysterious stranger. The cultivator, Ye Cheng, gave them a brief, reassuring smile. "Don't mention it. It was nothing more than a small favor. This stretch of sea is soaked in the Demon King's blood. That scent will draw every demon beast within miles. You'd best leave this place before more dangers arrive." With that, Ye Cheng turned on his heel. In a heartbeat, his body blurred into a shaft of silver light and vanished into the mist. "Farewell, Senior," Elder Yang called, standing to watch the spot where the cultivator had stood. He had intended to offer Ye Cheng all the valuables he carried as a token of gratitude, but the senior's departure was so swift that no thanks and no gift could follow him. Huang Yingying watched the spot where Ye Cheng had vanished, her eyes shining with awe. She'd always known her eldest brother was remarkable. At just 20 years old, he'd already reached the 8th level of true spirit. Among the younger generation of the major sects in the sea region, he was unquestioningly one of the top prodigies. Yet none of them could hold a candle to the white-clad youth she'd just encountered. On this training expedition, she'd brushed against death itself and been rescued by a genuine, peerless genius. 20 years old, and already a King Realm cultivator. She found herself whispering in disbelief, "He has to be one of the geniuses on the Emerald List." Elder Yang nodded slowly. "Only those monsters on the Emerald List break through to the King Realm by 20, he said, his voice hushed with reverence. "Today, we've actually met an Emerald List prodigy." "Emerald List?" Huang Yingying repeated, brow furrowed. "Elder Yang, what exactly is the Emerald List?" Elder Yang lifted his gaze, eyes gleaming with longing. The Emerald List is the summit of the Spirit Realm's official rankings, a roster of the realm's most exceptional talents. To appear on it, a young cultivator must be born with extraordinary destiny, and in the entire spirit realm, there are only 1,000 names on that list. Those who make the list are geniuses among geniuses, monsters among monsters. 1,000 names? That many? One of the junior disciples blurted, eyes wide. Elder Yang shot him a cool glance. Many? Do you have any idea how vast the spirit realm is? Take the Han Empire alone. Its population numbers in the hundreds of millions, and an empire like that contains hundreds of spirit realms. He paused to let the scale sink in. Now tell me, how many worthy contenders do you think there really are? The disciple fell silent. Compared to the realm's size, a mere 1,000 seemed pitifully few. Huang Yingying leaned forward. Was that young man just now, Ye Cheng, the Qinggong's prodigy? Elder Yang shrugged. He very well may be, but I can't say for sure. We're not from the interior. Our understanding of the Qinggong is limited. Chapter 10. After days of flying, Ye Cheng's spirit energy was nearly spent. Scanning the horizon, he spotted a large ship bound for Haiyue Island and descended aboard under cover of night. The deck was almost deserted, so he slipped on unnoticed. The vessel was vast, room for almost 10,000 souls, and housed every imaginable amenity, inns, tea houses, gambling dens, even brothels. Ye Cheng reserved a well-appointed cabin and retired to cultivate in private, intending to wait until his spirit power had sufficiently recovered before continuing his journey. By the following evening, he emerged from his secluded practice and opened his eyes. After taking 2 third-grade whealing pills, more than half of his spirit energy had been restored. In another day or two, he would be ready to set off again. Accustomed to the freedom of flight, the ship's pace felt painfully slow. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery shades of red, the vessel woke with life. Lanterns twinkled, laughter rose, and music drifted across the deck. Ye Cheng claimed a seat with the best view, ordered a lavish spread of food and fine wine, and settled in to enjoy the evening's festivities. Ye Cheng hadn't eaten in days. He'd been on the road so long that food no longer felt necessary. Yet as he wandered through the port town, a stubborn appetite nagged at him. With nothing better to do, he followed the sound of music drifting from a nearby brothel and climbed its worn wooden stairs. Halfway up, a sudden pang of nostalgia hit him. In his former life, he would never have set foot in such a place. But here, in this world of wandering cultivators and sea demons, he had no ties to anchor him. He pushed the thought aside and slipped into the tea house on the second floor. A cluster of over 20 young men and women sat at low tables, all dressed in fine robes embroidered with identical silver lotus patterns. Their posture, their laughter, everything marked them as disciples of the Chenshin Pavilion, one of the most prestigious sects in this coastal region. Townsfolk passing below craned their necks to catch a glimpse, envy bright in their eyes. At the center of the gathering sat a striking girl of 15 or 16. She held herself with unshakable composure, and though she was younger than most, every eye in the room turned to her as if waiting for her to speak. When she finally did, her voice rang clear. Junior Sister Gu has slain 23 sea monsters on this voyage, 2 of them 5th-grade true spirit beasts. Such a feat is unheard of for someone your age. Murmurs of admiration rippled through the hall. Ye Cheng, perched at a nearby table with a modest snack before him, watched the girl with renewed interest. Her presence, and the awe it inspired, stirred something deep inside him, ambition, or perhaps the faint pulse of a new beginning. I think first place is a foregone conclusion, our junior sister Gu, someone murmured. Absolutely. If the deputy pavilion master knew, he'd be over the moon. Their praise brought a pleased flush to Guyuxuan's cheeks. Admittedly, some of the compliments felt a bit perfunctory, but she didn't care. She relished being the center of attention. As a core disciple of Chenshin Pavilion, Guyuxuan had earned respect for her talents, but that wasn't the whole story. She was also the only daughter of the pavilion's deputy master, who doted on her as the apple of his eye. Raised in luxury and never lacking flattery, she'd grown up with an air of imperious confidence. Guyuxuan swept her gaze over the courtyard, her lips curling into a frown when she realized her junior hadn't returned. Where's Ye Cheng? Why isn't he back yet? She paced impatiently, muttering to herself, That brat, have I been too soft on him lately? Just then, footsteps sounded on the stairs. A young man in simple robes appeared, plain in dress but striking in appearance. "You're back," Gu Yeshuan said coolly, masking her jealousy under a polite tone. "How did the sales go, Gu Yecheng?" Gu Yecheng's shoulders slew. He held up the small pouch of coins in both hands and offered it meekly. "I'm sorry, senior sister," he said, voice low. "I only managed to sell a third of the stock." In an instant, Gu Yeshuan's palm shot out. The sharp crack of her slap echoed through the courtyard. Gu Yecheng's cheek reddened from the blow. "If you can't even handle a simple sale," Gu Yeshuan snapped, eyes flashing, "then what use are you to our sect? Perhaps you should just give up. I'll be sure to tell my father that you're nothing but dead weight. If you stay in Chenshin Pavilion, you'll only squander our resources," Gu Yeshuan sneered. "Exactly," several voices chimed in. "Junior Sister Gu gave you 3 days to sell that shipment, and so far you've moved only a third of it. It's a shame Senior Sister Gu trusted you enough to assign you this task," another added mockingly. A ripple of agreement ran through the onlookers. A few of the younger brothers cast pitying glances at Gu Chinger, bruised and humiliated, but no one dared speak up for her. 3 days ago, Gu Yueshuan had handed her an enormous cache of monster-slaying spoils and ordered her to sell them at the ship's trading house. The haul was far too large to clear in such a short span, but everyone knew Gu Yueshuan's true intention was to set Gu Chinger up for failure. Still, no one would risk the vice-chairman's daughter's wrath to defend an outer sect disciple. They all understood why Gu Yueshuan singled her out. Privilege and power spoke louder than fairness. Gu Chinger pressed a trembling hand to her reddened cheek, tears welling in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Senior Sister Gu," she whispered, the words tasting like ash on her tongue. She knew Gu Yueshuan was deliberately picking on her, but with her family's reputation riding on this placement at Chenshin Pavilion, she had no choice but to swallow her pride and apologize. Just as she braced herself for another blow, Gu Yueshuan's sharp gaze drifted away. Her eyes widened, and a slow smile curved her lips. "Oh, who's that handsome fellow?" she murmured. Across the hall, Gu Cheng sat alone, a jade cup of wine cradled in one hand. Soft music wove through the air, framing him like a living portrait. His elegant posture and finely cut features had already drawn the covetous attention of many disciples. Gu Yueshuan's resentment melted in an instant. Beauty, she knew, was the surest path to influence, and right now, she planned to make the most of his. Gu Yueshuan's eyes widened as she compared the newcomer to Gu Cheng. She'd never seen anyone so handsome. Without a second thought, she rose and hurried down the steps, leaving the disciples of Chenshin Pavilion whispering among themselves. Beside them, Gu Chinger let out a relieved breath. She looked up at Gu Cheng with clear gratitude in her eyes. If Gu Yueshuan hadn't changed her focus at the last moment, Chinger was certain she would still be facing some harsh penalty. "Huh?" Gu Chinger murmured, frowning slightly. It wasn't just that Gu Cheng was strikingly handsome. She wasn't that shallow. What unsettled her was the eerie sense of familiarity she felt whenever she glanced at him. She'd never met this man before, yet something about his face tugged at a hidden corner of her memory. She studied him carefully, but the more she looked, the more the sensation slipped away, like a dream upon waking. Whatever it was, it left Gu Chinger with a strange, lingering impression she couldn't and wouldn't ignore. Chapter 11. "Sir, may I join you?" Gu Yueshuan approached Gu Cheng's table, her unruly air smoothed away, her voice as gentle as a spring breeze. She didn't wait for an answer before sliding onto the empty chair beside him. Gu Cheng glanced up from his scroll and said coldly, "No." Then he looked away, his attention already back on the lines of text before him. Gu Yueshuan's heart stuttered. She'd imagined so many possible responses: kindness, surprise, even curiosity, but never outright refusal. Her cheeks flushed, her carefully chosen words swept away by that 2-letter dismissal. He'd surely heard the ruckus on the second floor. Didn't he care? To him, she was just a bothersome girl, unworthy of his time. Burning with both shock and indignation, Gu Yueshuan rose and swept back up the stairs. On the second floor, she found Gu Chinger seated quietly at the edge of the gathering. Gu Yueshuan's eyes narrowed. "You, a lowly outer disciple, have the nerve to sit here? Begone!" Gu Chinger started, but said nothing. She rose, quietly made her way down the stairs, and tucked herself into a distant corner seat. The murmurs around her fell silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. A cluster of Chenqin Pavilion disciples hurried to surround Gu Yuexuan, their voices a flurry of anxious encouragement. "Senior Sister Gu, please don't be angry. That stinky brat just doesn't know what's good for him. He should count himself lucky you even notice him. If he knew you were the Deputy Pavilion Master's daughter, he'd probably kick himself for life. If fighting weren't strictly forbidden aboard this ship, I'd teach him a lesson in your name." Despite their best efforts, Gu Yuexuan's expression remained stormy, until, at last, her frown began to soften. But the momentary relief was shattered the instant she glanced downward. On the deck below, Gu Cheng sat serenely, and to Gu Yuexuan's mounting horror, Gu Ye Cheng had slipped in beside her. The two were chatting and laughing together, as though they'd never heard of her. Gu Yuexuan's chest heaved with rage. Around her, the other disciples fell silent, exchanging embarrassed looks. None of them knew how to calm their senior sister now. This outright humiliation was beyond soothing words. Just moments before, Gu Yuexuan had boldly approached Gu Ye Cheng, determined to make him acknowledge her feelings. Instead, he'd turned away without so much as a glance, treating her like thin air. And here he was now, utterly at ease in another's company. Anger flared in Gu Yuexuan's eyes as she stared down at them. She had no choice but to swallow her pride, for now, and figure out her next move. But inside, her heart burned with the determination to make Gu Ye Cheng answer for this slight, one way or another. Despite his earlier brusqueness toward Gu Yuexuan, Gu Ye Cheng now made his way purposefully to find Gu Chinger. From the second-floor balcony of the tea-house, Gu Yuexuan's cheeks burned with indignation. Why did every man seem to orbit around that girl? Senior brother Han had fallen for her, and now Gu Ye Cheng too? It couldn't be mere vanity. Gu Chinger was lovely, yes, but she still paled beside his wife, Jiang Lianxin. What troubled Gu Ye Cheng was not her beauty, but an unaccountable sense of familiarity he felt whenever he looked at her. Startled by his approach, Gu Chinger recoiled as if a rabbit had spotted a fox. She cast a terrified glance up at Gu Yuexuan's furious glare and prayed silently that Gu Ye Cheng would lose interest and leave. "May I join you?" Gu Ye Cheng asked, his voice gentle and reassuring, a warm smile on his lips. Gu Chinger's reply was barely audible. "Yes, please." Once she had settled onto the cushion opposite him, Gu Ye Cheng studied her thoughtfully. "I know we've never met before," he began, voice low, "yet I can't shake the feeling that I've seen you somewhere. Do you feel it too?" He immediately bit back a sigh of regret. Had those words sounded like a flimsy excuse to strike up a conversation? But Gu Chinger only looked at him with wide, curious eyes, and for a moment the world outside the tea-house seemed to fall away. Gu Ye Cheng frowned. They might resemble each other, but that was no explanation for the sudden, unmistakable sense of familiarity he felt. It was odd. This was their first meeting, after all. Gu Chinger met his gaze, her own expression mirroring his confusion. "Young master, do you feel it too? That connection? I feel it, even though we've never met." His eyes brightened as a realization struck. "Your surname is Gu?" She nodded eagerly, lips parting in surprise. "Yes, Gu Chinger." "Gu Ye Cheng," he replied softly, her breath caught. "You're a Gu as well?" That truth made everything click into place. They weren't close relatives, yet they shared a common bloodline. Millennia ago, at the height of its power, the Gu clan boasted tens of thousands of direct descendants and countless collateral branches. Then came the fall. The family splintered across the spirit realm, some lineages even venturing beyond its borders. After 10,000 years, only a handful of branches remained scattered across the realms. Gu Chinger and Gu Ye Cheng were two of the last. Gu Ye Cheng sat across from the young woman named Gu Chinger, his curiosity piqued by her unexpected excitement. She leaned forward, eyes shining. "So, Brother Ye Cheng, our families are actually the same clan?" Her voice trembled with wonder. "No wonder I felt that strange pull the moment I saw you. It seems we share the same blood." Gu Ye Cheng offered a polite smile. He'd heard rumors of the Gu family's many offshoots, but he had never met anyone from another branch, certainly not someone as spirited as this island heiress. Chinger's joy was contagious. She'd grown up hearing her father speak of the once mighty Gu lineage, how, in ages past, the family had ruled great swaths of the continent, and how little was known of its scattered descendants today. Her father had searched in vain for any trace of lost branches, never dreaming that one would find them first. "I had no idea," Ye Cheng admitted. "Your father must be relieved and surprised." Qing'er nodded eagerly. "My branch settled on Wangqin Island generations ago. We've always been isolated. My father always thought we might be the only remaining Gu family." She paused, studying his face. "Your family is from Zhonglan City, right?" "I am," he replied. "Our branch there is still strong, a major force in the Zhonglan region." "Then that explains your reputation," she murmured, eyes widening. "And yet, how did my father never hear of you?" Before Ye Cheng could answer, Qing'er laughed lightly. "Han-Chin Empire. That's where your family's branch originally settled. It's incredibly far from Wangqin Island. No wonder my father's messengers never made the journey." Ye Cheng nodded. The distance was indeed vast. Over mountains and across seas, the Han-Chin Empire lay at the empire's northeastern edge, a land nearly impossible for a small island family to reach. He sipped his tea, watching Qing'er's animated features. In that moment, two long-lost branches of the great Gu family had finally found each other, and everything was about to change. Ye Cheng watched in frustration as Qing'er's laughter echoed through the modest family courtyard. The Gu household boasted not a single true powerhouse. Qing'er's father, a consummate ninefold true spirit, was easily the strongest member. It was a sorry state of affairs by any standard. Yet tonight, the two of them couldn't stop talking. Qing'er's eyes sparkled with excitement. "I can't wait to break the news to father," she gushed. "He's going to be overjoyed." Up on the second floor of the tea house, Guiyuan stiffened at the sound of their cheerful chatter. Anger flared in her chest. With a snap of her sleeves, she swept back into her private quarters, already plotting how to make Qing'er pay for her insolence. Out of sight, out of mind, she thought, savoring the prospect of revenge. Meanwhile, by the soft glow of lantern light, Ye Cheng and Qing'er continued their conversation late into the night. When Qing'er finally stood, hesitating, he gently stopped her. "Brother Ye Cheng," she said, anxiety creeping into her voice, "I should head back before senior sister Gu notices. She'll be furious if I stay out too late." He waved her back to her seat. "What's the difference between coming home early or late?" She bit her lip. "Even if I arrive early, she'll drag me through the mud." He offered her a reassuring smile. "Relax. Now that I'm here, no one can mistreat you. And as for Qianxia Pavilion..." He trailed off, but the confidence in his eyes was enough to put her at ease. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. "If they're all like that, then you shouldn't stay." Ye Cheng's gaze turned steely. Now that he knew Qing'er was his clan sister, there was no way he would let her return to such a hostile household. And he certainly wouldn't stand by while Guiyuan tormented her. No one dared bully a member of the Gu family under his watch. Qing'er bit her lip, torn. She remembered what Ye Cheng had told her about the Gu clan's branch in Zhonglan City. True, they were stronger than the Wangqin Island faction, but they were still limited. Standing up to a powerhouse like the Qianxia Pavilion, especially one led by a half-step king-level cultivator, would be suicide. If she went back, all she'd face was endless humiliation, and she couldn't bear the thought of dragging Ye Cheng and his family into that mess. Ye Cheng's expression softened, though his voice remained firm. "Don't worry. I'll have a room ready for you. You can stay right next to mine." He spoke with such certainty that Qing'er found herself unable to refuse. Chapter 12. By first light the next morning, all the disciples of Qianxia Pavilion had gathered in the courtyard, everyone except Ye Cheng. "Sister, he still hasn't come back," stammered Dong Hao under Guiyuan's sharp glare. Guiyuan's face darkened. "Missing since last night? That little brat, off hooking up with someone on our very first night? Unbelievable." She rubbed her aching eyes, still bitter from a sleepless night, and her temper flared anew. Before Dong Hao could answer, the double doors at the end of the hall swung open. An elderly man entered, his eyes warm as he took in the scene. "Well now, what's all this fuss about?" he asked, smiling at Yueshuan's exasperation. This was Elder Wang Zhang, affectionately called Uncle Wang by the younger disciples, and the sole elder assigned to lead Gu Yueshuan's training squad. While other squads boasted 2 or 3 elders each, none matched Wang Zhong's strength and experience. His presence here had been personally arranged by the deputy pavilion master, for this was the very team that included his daughter. The courtyard fell silent as everyone turned to Uncle Wang, waiting for him to shed light on Ye Cheng's mysterious disappearance. Uncle Wang, Ye Cheng hurried forward, her face a picture of indignation. It's Ye Cheng. He spent last night with a stranger he just met and didn't come back until dawn. He's brought nothing but shame on Chengxin Pavilion. Why is someone like that still allowed to stay here? She snapped. He's demeaning our entire reputation. Wang Zhong arched an eyebrow and surveyed the assembled disciples. They all offered eager nods of agreement, but he knew better than to take Gu Yueshuan at her word. Spoiled by her father's position as deputy pavilion master, she was infamous for exaggerating and bullying underlings. He folded his arms, withholding judgment. At that moment, the door swung open again. Elder Yang, you've returned already? He began. A second training party entered the hall. Had Ye Cheng been present, he would have recognized every face. These were the same Chengxin Pavilion disciples he rescued not long ago. Yet only a handful remained, Yang Zhen, Huang Yingying, and a few others. Wang Zhong frowned at the sparse group. Where are Elder Ruome, Elder Ping, and the rest of your team? A tense silence fell. The few disciples shifted uncomfortably, glancing at one another but saying nothing, leaving Wang Zhong even more puzzled. They're all dead. Yang Zhen's voice cracked as he stepped into the pavilion's main hall, and a hush fell over the assembled disciples. What? Someone blurted, disbelief etched on every face. All of them? Another whispered. Normally, a training patrol consisted of 20 to 30 disciples. Only a handful had returned. Everyone else was gone. The losses were staggering. Tell us what happened, demanded a senior disciple. These were our best, Yang Zhen said, voice thick. Inner sect core disciples and the most promising of the outer sect, each one a treasure to Chengxin Pavilion. Losing dozens of them. He choked off the words and took a steadying breath. During our exercises, we ran into a king-tier demon king. Elder Ruome and Elder Ping held it off so the rest of us could retreat. Neither of them survived. A stunned silence settled over the hall. A king-tier demon king? Here? Wang Zhong's tone was barely audible, part disbelief, part alarm. He knew Elder Yang well. If Yang Zhen was lying, it was to save face, not to protect someone else. Do you think I joke about this? Yang Zhen's sorrow-hazed eyes glowed with righteous anger. I'd sooner die than make up such a lie. The hall remained deathly quiet as the disciples absorbed the news. King-tier threats were supposed to dwell far beyond the shallow sea. Yet here one had struck, and the price had been unthinkably high. Chapter 8. The hall was quiet except for the low murmur of anxious disciples. Wang Zhong's brow was furrowed as he glanced over the shaken young faces before him. If that many people saw it, he said, slowly. Word of this will spread throughout the sea region before long. Yang Zhen swallowed hard, guilt warring with relief on his features. He met Wang Zhong's eyes. Master Wang, I don't know how we lived through it. If it hadn't been for a passing king-level expert, our entire team would have been wiped out on the spot. Wang Zhong sighed and laid a comforting hand on Yang Zhen's shoulder. You couldn't have known what you were facing. A king-level demon lord would have sent all of us, me, you, even the pavilion master, to our deaths in an instant. You did your best to protect your disciples. You're lucky to be alive. Yang Zhen forced a bitter smile. We'll return to the sect immediately and inform the pavilion master of what happened. Before anyone could reply, the heavy wooden door at the far end of the hall exploded inward with a thunderous crack. Splinters flew, and a fierce wind blasted through the room. Ye Cheng strode in, his eyes blazing with fury, Gu Qinger close at his side. His voice cut through the stunned silence like a knife. Well, look who has the nerve to show up here, he sneered, advancing on a young woman standing among the disciples. And you even brought your new lover along. Gu Yueshuan barely had time to register his presence before Ye Cheng's hand snapped out like lightning. The resounding slap echoed off the walls, and she hurtled backward across the floor in a spray of blood. There was no time for a scream, only a stunned, gurgling gasp as she hit the ground. Silence fell once more, broken only by the terrible drip of crimson onto stone. Ye Cheng stood over her, chest heaving, while the onlookers froze in horror at the sight of violence unleashed so suddenly in their midst. The moment passed in an instant, so sudden that no one had time to react. Ye Cheng lunged toward Gu Yueshuan, right there in front of elders Wang Zhong and Yang Zhen of the Dust Heart Pavilion. The assembled cultivators stood frozen, mouths agape. Wang Zhong's face went pale. Only minutes ago, he'd been reeling from the news of his fallen disciple. Now, another pavilion disciple, Gu Yueshuan, the very student the deputy pavilion master had charged him to protect, was under assault. Rage and panic swelled in his chest as he moved to intervene, until Yang Zhen's startled voice stopped him cold. "Senior? Could that really be you?" All eyes swung to Ye Cheng. Yang Zhen's tone was half incredulous, half awed. He had never forgotten the man who, with a single sword stroke, had slain a king-level demon. To anyone who'd witnessed it, the feat was legendary. "Senior," he repeated, stepping forward. Wang Zhong hesitated, glancing between Ye Cheng's composed figure and the astonished Yang Zhen. Something in his fellow elder's recognition gave him pause. Had he misread the situation? And in that heartbeat of uncertainty, the clash of wills and swords was about to begin. Yang Zhen was an elder of the Dust Heart Pavilion, his cultivation already at the Sixth Tribulation realm. No match for Ye Cheng's lofty achievements, but still enough to command respect among those present. "This elder is the King Realm expert who saved our lives," Yang Zhen announced, his voice carrying over the stunned crowd. A ripple of disbelief ran through the onlookers. Ye Cheng, a King Realm expert? In his 20s? It sounded like a tall tale. Only Huang Yingying, Yang Zhen, and a handful of insiders exchanged uneasy glances, while everyone else stared as though he'd sprouted wings. Ye Cheng caught their incredulous stares, but paid them no mind. His own grudge against the Dust Heart Pavilion was too deep to indulge their doubts. Behind him, Gu Qinger, his younger sister, pressed a hand to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. "Brother Ye Cheng, a King Realm expert?" On the ground, Gu Yueshuan struggled to rise. Her hand clutched the side of her face, which was already stained crimson. She stared at him in stunned silence. In all her years, even under her stern father's rule, she had never known the sting of a blow like this. Ye Cheng's gaze was cold. "When you tormented Qinger, did you ever imagine this day would come?" With measured steps, he closed the distance between them. Gu Yueshuan's breath caught in her throat. She tried to speak, but the words died on her lips as Ye Cheng paused before her. In that moment, the pavilion's hierarchy and her own sense of invulnerability shattered. The hall fell silent, every pair of eyes fixed on the brother and sister duo at the center of this reckoning. "Senior." Before Wang Zhong could finish his protest, a thunderous blast hurled him clear out of the ship. He landed in a crumpled heap on the deck with a groan. Ye Cheng's voice cut through the stunned silence. "If you ever plead for her again, I will kill you." Every disciple of Chenxin Pavilion felt a chill crawl up their spines. Elder Wang Zhong, renowned as one of their strongest elders, hadn't even been able to guard against a single strike from this young man. Suddenly, Elder Yang's earlier warning flashed through their minds. This youth was no ordinary cultivator, but a king-level powerhouse. A king, stronger even than their pavilion master. For many, it was the first time they'd ever witnessed a true king's might, and their hearts quaked at the realization. Ye Cheng's gaze sliced through the crowd, cold and unyielding. "You dare to bully my sister? Is this how you want to die?" Chapter 13. The assembled cultivators froze. Clan sister? Gu Qinger was the clan sister of this king-tier expert? Only now did they understand why Ye Cheng had defiantly stood his ground. But the Qing family was nothing more than a minor household. How could they have ties to a sovereign-level master? It made no sense. Fearful murmurs rippled through the crowd until one of the elders, Gu Yueshuan, fell to his knees and kowtowed frantically. "I was wrong, Elder Gu. I didn't know Qinger was your clan sister. Please forgive me. I beg you." He wept and prostrated himself, hoping to placate Ye Cheng. But Ye Cheng's expression remained cold. In a blur of motion, a slender beam of spiritual energy materialized as a glowing sword, slicing through the air and piercing Gu Yueshuan's chest. His life force drained away in an instant. On the deck of the ship, Elder Wang Zhong of the Chenxin Pavilion staggered back, blood frosting his lips. He'd been thrown clear by Ye Cheng's attack, and was now too grievously wounded to intervene. He watched, conflicted, as Gu Yueshuan's body collapsed. Not a single word passed his lips. Gu Yecheng beckoned for Gu Qinger, then turned toward the onlookers. His voice was low, but every word carried the weight of sovereign-level authority. Your compromise with such a pretender speaks volumes about her family. Clearly, her father never knew how to raise a proper daughter. Without another glance, he lifted Gu Qinger in his arms and strode toward the ship's railing. Beside him, Wang Zhang could only watch in silence as they departed into the gathering mists. Go ahead, let your pavilion master try to kill him. I'll be at Chenxin Pavilion soon, Gu Yecheng said coolly, his eyes colder than ice. And if your deputy pavilion master is still alive when I arrive, none of you will walk away. With those words, he sealed the deputy master's fate. Without another glance, Gu Yecheng swept Gu Qinger into his arms and rose into the sky, leaving the stunned disciples of Chenxin Pavilion behind. No one dared make a sound. They simply stared at each other in helpless silence. In truth, many of them felt no pity. Gu Yueshuan's reputation for arrogance and tyranny ran deep. She had bullied more than a few of them, and they had never dared speak up. This time, she'd finally bumped into someone stronger. No one could say she didn't deserve it. Elder Yang hurried to Wang Zhang's side and asked anxiously, Elder Wang, are you all right? Wang Zhang shook his head, grimacing. I'm fine. He held back. Indeed he had. At best, Wang Zhang was a 7th-level robbery realm cultivator. If a king-level master had unleashed even a casual strike, there'd be nothing left of him. I just don't know how I'm going to explain this to the deputy pavilion master when I get back, Lao Wang muttered, wringing his hands. Besides, he specifically told me to take good care of Schwanner when he sent me off. I crouched beside him and shook my head. Lao Wang, have you lost your mind? Explain? What does there even be to explain to someone who's dead? Dead? Lao Wang's jaw dropped as the realization hit him like a freight train. He stood there, eyes wide, utterly stunned. 3 days later, Gu Yecheng and Gu Qinger set foot on Haiyue Island. The island itself was small, dominated by a single city, Haiyue City. Their arrival was auspicious. In just 2 days, the Haiyue Auction House, the island's largest and most prestigious auctioneering institution, would host a grand sale. Priceless relics, rare cultivation manuals, and other treasures would all cross the block. The auction house was jointly managed by the 3 semi-king families of Haiyue Island, each vying quietly for influence and profit. Gu Yecheng planned to attend the event, then accompany Qinger back to their ancestral home on Wangqin Island. En route, they would pass Chenxin Island, the seat of the Chenxin Pavilion. A few months earlier, Ye Cheng had delivered an unmistakable warning to the pavilion's leadership. If the deputy pavilion master turned up alive, or worse, escaped, then Chenxin Pavilion would have no future. With that threat hanging over them, it was all the more important to keep their promise of a swift journey. Now, as the ferry docked and the breeze carried the scent of salt and auction excitement, Gu Yecheng squared his shoulders. Haiyue City's bright lanterns and bustling streets awaited, and with them, the next chapter of his carefully laid plans. The pavilion master, the deputy pavilion master, and every senior elder of Chenxin Pavilion had gathered at the harbor long before dawn, eager to welcome back their disciples and fellow elders from training. At last, the sails appeared on the horizon, and the ships eased into the harbor, proof that everyone who had gone on that journey had safely returned. Standing at the center of the welcome party was the pavilion master himself. Clad in flowing azure robes, he appeared to be in his 40s, still vigorous, yet already legendary. More than 2 decades ago, Chenxin Pavilion had been a tiny, almost forgotten sect on the Lanchi Islands. Ever since he took the helm, it had grown with astonishing speed, rising to become one of the archipelago's most powerful sects. Many whispered that, before long, he would break through into the king realm. At his side stood Deputy Pavilion Master Gu Ming, a white-haired elder whose mastery of the 9th level of the Tribulation Realm made him the pavilion's 2nd strongest cultivator. Today, Gu Ming's normally reserved features were illuminated by a broad, almost boyish grin. As the ships grounded on the dock, disciples poured onto the planks, chattering excitedly as they reunited with familiar faces. Among them was Gu Yecheng, young, determined, and firmly male, whose heart thumped at the sight of the pavilion master's stern yet approving gaze. Even after all his years of cultivation, that look never failed to set his pulse racing. With the last of the vessels secured, the pavilion master extended his hand in greeting. "Welcome home, everyone," he said, his voice carrying easily over the lapping water. "Report your progress at once. There's much to discuss." The assembled disciples straightened, ready to share their accomplishments and to chart the next chapter of Chengqian Pavilion's rise. The head of Chengqian Pavilion had longed for a son, but in his twilight years he'd been blessed instead with a daughter, Gu Yuexuan, affectionately called Xuan Er. He adored her without reserve. Whatever she asked, he strove to provide. No wonder she'd grown used to having her every whim obeyed. That afternoon, the last of the disciples and elders filed back into the pavilion courtyard. Ye Cheng spotted Elder Wang Zhang emerging from the tree line, carrying something bulky over his shoulder. Heart-pounding, he hurried forward. "Elder Wang, you've returned safely. Where's Xuaner? I've been planning a surprise for her all morning." Wang Zhang smiled, setting down his burden. She mentioned she wanted a piece of spiritual wood, yuanling timber, to decorate her chamber. "I searched high and low and finally tracked down this slab. It's as rare as they come." Ye Cheng's eyes lit up. "This is perfect. Xuaner will be overjoyed." He leaned forward, eager to run his fingers over the wood's smooth, reddish grain, but Wang Zhang's smile faded. He tapped the edge of the timber solemnly. "There's a catch, Master Gu. This particular variety of yuanling wood isn't usually used for ornamentation. It's prized, above all, for making coffins. Its strength and spiritual resonance make it ideal for funerary rites." "A coffin?" Ye Cheng blinked, his hand frozen in midair. "I thought this was for her room decoration. Why would anyone turn such a gift into a funeral box?" For a moment, the pavilion fell silent. Ye Cheng stared at the slab of wood, uncertainty clouding his excitement. He'd intended nothing more than a delight for his daughter, yet now the timber before him bore a far darker purpose. Wang Zhang paid him no heed. Instead, he fixed the master of Chengqian Pavilion and the senior disciples with a cold stare. "Well then, what are you waiting for?" Before Wang Zhang's return, he dispatched a messenger ahead to alert the master of Chengqian Pavilion. He knew all too well that if Ye Cheng tried to flee, the entire pavilion would go down with him. A sudden surge of panic rattled Ye Cheng's heart, and he took an involuntary step back, instinctively preparing to bolt. But before he could move, a sharp crack split the air. Smack! The master of Chengqian Pavilion, standing directly behind him, had struck him across the back with a single palm. Ye Cheng staggered forward, a mouthful of blood spraying onto the ground. He whirled around, eyes wide with disbelief. That one blow had been devastating. "Master, why?" he choked out. The master's face remained calm, his voice eerily steady. "Over the years I have dedicated myself entirely to Chengqian Pavilion, never once failing its cause. Yet now," he paused, his gaze ice-cold as it settled on Ye Cheng. "Why did your beloved daughter dare to provoke an existence that even Chengqian Pavilion must treat as untouchable?" He let the words hang in the charged silence. A king-level powerhouse. It was more than just any ordinary expert. The implication was unmistakable. She'd crossed someone beyond their reach. Ye Cheng felt the residual tremor in his sword arm as he stepped back into the main hall of Chengqian Pavilion. At just 20 years old, he had accomplished the impossible, slain a king-level demon lord with a single strike. He understood better than anyone what that meant. A foe of such power could only have been nurtured by a supreme force. Rumor said he came from the Holy Land Divine Court, an empire renowned for producing the cruelest prodigies. The notion of a teenager reaching king-level cultivation was enough to chill the blood. No sooner had the hall fallen silent than a chorus of outraged voices erupted behind him. Ye Cheng turned to see the pavilion's elders advancing on his father, Gu Ming, their faces lined with fury and dread. "I warned you," spat Elder Li, fisting his robes. "If you spoiled your son like this, disaster would strike eventually, and here we are. But did you ever listen?" Elder Zhao sneered. "That king-level assassin threatened, if you don't offer your life, hundreds of disciples in Chengqian Pavilion will die. Do you expect us to blame anyone but you and your precious son?" Another elder's voice rang out. "You speak of loyalty to the pavilion master, yet you've dragged our name through the mud. Do you really think the master is unaware of your private affairs?" The elders closed in, their eyes flashing. Finally, Elder Wen pointed toward the steps leading down from the hall. "Gu Ming, accompany your son below. Both of you will answer for this." Gu Ming's face went ashen. Beside him, Ye Cheng gathered himself, his mind racing. He knew there was no turning back now. Together, father and son would face whatever judgment awaited, and whatever enemies lay in wait beyond the pavilion doors. Chapter 14. Haiyue City. When Ye Cheng and Gu Qinger disembarked on the island, they made straight for a modest inn and settled in. With the auction still 2 days away, they had time to explore. Though Ye Cheng had spent over a decade in this world, he'd never visited a major cultivator trading hub, and the novelty excited him. After a brief meal, Ye Cheng sat with Qinger in their room. He explained his plan. He would take their collection of elixirs and Monster King materials to the auction house for appraisal and bidding, then return to relay the outcome. Passing her a small jade talisman for sound transmission, he told her not to worry and strode out. The streets of Haiyue City lived up to their reputation. Stalls hugged the sidewalks, brimming with weapons of every make, jars of shimmering spiritual medicines, and racks displaying monster furs, bones, and fangs. Occasional roars of negotiation rose above the general bustle, punctuated by the clink of metal, the swish of silk robes, and the low hum of cultivators testing their engines of power. Ye Cheng paused at a stall hawking obsidian blade sabers, then pressed on. The crowd thickened as he neared the heart of the city. Before him rose the Haiyue Auction House, a 30-foot-high tower of white stone, flanked by carved dragons that seemed to come alive in the afternoon sun. He paused at its grand entrance, adjusting the heavy satchel of goods over his shoulder. Inside awaited potential fortune and fierce competition. With one last breath to steady his nerves, Ye Cheng stepped up the polished steps, ready to claim his place in the auction hall. Ye Cheng stepped into the bustling auction hall, its vaulted ceiling lit by dozens of floating lanterns. Before he could take more than 2 strides, a sharply tailored steward hurried over, bowing with practiced courtesy. "Welcome, sir. Are you here to place a bid today?" the steward asked, voice polite but efficient. Ye Cheng allowed himself a small nod. "Please summon the auction director. I have a special request." The steward's smile wavered, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. "May I ask what items you wish to bid on?" "I'm one of the stewards here. Most transactions can be handled by me." Ye Cheng's dark eyes narrowed just slightly. "I'm after materials from a Demon King-level beast, along with several top-grade elixirs. I assume that goes beyond your approval authority?" The steward blinked, clearly taken aback. "Demon King-level materials?" He studied Ye Cheng as though seeing him for the first time. I'll need to fetch the auction director right away, sir." Before the steward could turn, Ye Cheng produced a small jade-patterned pouch and laid it on a nearby table. Without a word, he folded his arms and waited. "Sir, forgive my haste," the steward murmured, kneeling beside the pouch. He closed his eyes and reached out with his spiritual consciousness. Seconds later, he gasped so sharply that a few nearby bidders glanced over in alarm. The pouch lay open to reveal the massive, coiled corpse of a legendary Demon King beast, its iridescent scales still trembling with latent spiritual energy. The steward's face drained of color. He scrambled to his feet, voice trembling. "Sir, please remain here. I will fetch the auction director immediately." With that, he dashed off down the hall, glancing back over his shoulder as he vanished through a pair of ornately carved doors. Whispered murmurs followed him, and all eyes in the auction house turned to Ye Cheng, whose calm expression betrayed nothing of the storm he was about to unleash. Ye Cheng barely had time to slip the storage pouch back into his sash before a steward called out, "This way, escort the young master to the VIP salon." Guided through richly carved corridors, Ye Cheng soon found himself standing in a private chamber whose walls gleamed with polished jade and silk hangings. A moment later, a striking woman in deep purple silk glided in. She offered a graceful bow, then smiled with practiced warmth. "Sir, thank you for coming," she said. "My name is Mu Ziyi. I oversee VIP affairs here at the auction house." In her early 30s, Mu Ziyi carried herself with the poise of a seasoned cultivator and the allure of the finest courtesan. Every subtle tilt of her head, every measured step, hinted at a delicious ripeness, an intoxicating blend of elegance and temptation that made it hard for Ye Cheng to focus. Curiously, he tapped the interface only he could see. System prompt. Natural charming body, blue. Charming body, he muttered under his breath. A useful gift, but blue rank was far from legendary. Still, in all the world, few possessed any level of charming body. Those who did were destined for greatness in trade, and coveted by cultivators seeking a perfect partner or an influential spouse. Even a blue rating marked someone as extraordinary. Leaning forward, Muzi gave him a knowing smile. "Shall we begin?" Muzi allowed herself a small, wry smile. Had she not been born into a semi-king powerhouse like the Haiyue auction house, she would have been long since captured and turned into a pet furnace for alchemical use. Ye Cheng. After exchanging polite greetings, Ye Cheng didn't waste another moment. He produced a sealed storage bag and handed it to her. Muzi raised an eyebrow in surprise. She'd been warned to expect something unusual, but nothing could have prepared her for what was inside. Taking the bag, she activated her spiritual sense and peered within. A massive, perfectly preserved corpse, clearly Demon King level, weighed down the container. Even here, at one of the largest auction houses in the region, such specimens were almost unheard of. In these shallow sea territories, Demon Kings were astonishingly rare. As she caught Ye Cheng's steady gaze, she noticed he'd barely hesitated upon seeing her, an uncommon display of composure. Most young men, upon meeting Muzi's youthful vigor and effortless charm, would have been too distracted to focus at all. But Ye Cheng had regained his poise in an instant. With a respectful nod, he asked, "Is everything in order?" Muzi blinked, then smiled. "Perfectly. Let's discuss terms." And with that, she tucked the storage bag away and led him toward the auction hall, her mind already racing with the possibilities this Demon King corpse would bring. Only by venturing into the uncharted depths of the Wanyao Sea could anyone hope to wield that kind of power. Even the fearsome King Realm warriors steer well clear of these waters, its prime hunting ground for demon beasts, and one misstep can mean certain death. "Mr. Gu, may I ask where you found this Waterwolf King's corpse?" Muzi eyed him curiously. "Please don't think I have any ulterior motives. I'm just genuinely interested. If you'd rather not say, that's fine too." Ye Cheng smiled faintly. He'd almost forgotten to mention the most important detail, the name of the Demon King he'd slain. "I killed it myself," he replied coolly. Muzi rolled her eyes, clearly unconvinced. If he didn't want to share the truth, fine, but that excuse was transparently flimsy. As expected, she didn't believe him, and yet it was the absolute truth. Hiding behind an old man's guise might have been more credible. He wondered for a moment if he should have tried that instead. Ye Cheng merely shrugged and said nothing more. "Believe what I've told you or don't. That's up to Muzi." He paused, then added, "Aside from what you've already seen, I have an entire batch of elixirs that won't go to auction. Tell me what price your auction house would offer. If it's fair, I'll sell them outright." With that, he produced a second storage pouch and handed it to Muzi. The moment Muzi caught sight of it, his calm demeanor shattered and excitement flared anew. He flipped the pouch open and read aloud, "Huyuan pills, Juchi pills, Bingshin pills, Jiedu pills." But the real shock wasn't the variety. Common as these names sounded, nearly every pill inside was Danwen grade. Refining a Danwen grade pill is no small feat. Even a high-level alchemist sometimes fails to produce one. Yet this pouch contained dozens, many bearing multiple Danwen inscriptions, some with 8 or 9 flawless seals. "Only a pill emperor could craft pills of such quality," Muzi whispered, eyes wide. "Is there really a Dan emperor operating in the Wanyao Sea?" Muzi studied Ye Cheng with mounting curiosity. In the annals of history, many had risen to become Dan emperors, but Dan kings were almost unheard of. Yet here before her lay a perfectly preserved Demon King corpse, surrounded by a horde of ancient elixirs stamped with intricate pill-pattern runes. Had Ye Cheng truly unearthed his ancestors' ill-starred legacy? She counted the jars one by one. 26 Huyuan pills in total, 3 bearing 8-point patterns, 10 with 7 points, and the remainder with 6. Rising to her full height, she offered, "The Haiyue auction house can offer you 53,000 low-grade spirit stones for this batch. How does that sound, Mr. Gu?" Ye Cheng nodded thoughtfully. He'd already checked the standard market rates. Muzi's proposal was generous. And regarding the Demon King corpse, she added, we will charge a 5% handling fee on its final sale price. Are you agreeable to these terms? A faint smile curved Ye Cheng's lips. I accept, he said calmly. But one condition, the corpse must remain intact and undisturbed. Its secrets belong to my family's honor. Muzi inclined her head, sealing the agreement. As they finalized the contract, Ye Cheng couldn't help but wonder what other long-lost treasures his ancestors had hidden and whether uncovering them would bring him nothing but misfortune. Gu, if you entrust everything to Haiyu Auction House, Z will make sure the bid meets your expectations. Fine. Ye Cheng waved off any further haggling over the spirit stones. The corpse of the Water Wolf King was infinitely more valuable than the handful of stones in question, and certainly worth more than the pills in his storage bag. He paused at the threshold. By the way, does your auction house handle pill-grade elixirs? Muziji started. Ye Cheng had just handed over a sizable stock of pills, and she'd assumed that was all he had. Yet his casual tone suggested otherwise. You still have more? Not on me at the moment, Ye Cheng admitted with a small smile, but I can refine as many as needed. If Haiyu is interested, we could work together regularly. Muzi's eyes widened in disbelief. He defeated a Demon King, refined second and third grade Danwen elixirs, and now was offering long-term cooperation? Was he under the impression he was the undisputed emperor of alchemy? She struggled to keep her composure. Despite her astonishment, a partnership with someone of Ye Cheng's talent could prove highly profitable. She squared her shoulders, determined to play along. Very well, young master. I'll discuss the details with my associates. I believe this could be the beginning of a mutually beneficial arrangement. As they parted ways, Ye Cheng headed toward the exit of the auction hall, already contemplating his next batch of pills, while Muzi hurried back in to prepare for what promised to be a lucrative and extraordinarily ambitious alliance. Of course, no matter how many you bring in, the Haiyu auction house will handle them all. Elixirs, especially those for healing, spiritual restoration, and detoxification, were perpetually in short supply. With scores of sects and lone cultivators spread throughout the southern Wanyao Sea, demand soared ever higher. Any stock of pills, no matter how large, would find eager buyers here. Very well, Ye Cheng replied, a faint smile playing on his lips. Let's get underway. Without a backward glance, he strode away, leaving Muzi alone in the great hall. She watched his retreating figure and shook her head in exasperation. Ye Cheng was unpredictable at best, one moment slaying demon kings, the next refining Danwen-grade elixirs. Hardly the model of consistency. Before she could dwell further, on his unreliability, a presence materialized behind her. Muzi turned to find a venerable old man standing quietly, his eyes sharp beneath bushy brows. Taishang Yin, she greeted him with a respectful bow. The old man nodded once, surveying the auction floor. The Haiyu auction house wasn't a private venture, but a joint enterprise of the region's 5 semi-king families. Each clan boasted at least one semi-king, and together they regulated every transaction within these walls. Muzi's heart skipped. Where Ye Cheng went, intrigue rarely followed far behind. The Mu family held the second seat among the 5 semi-king clans. Today, one of its 2 semi-kings, Yin Taishang, slipped into the inner chamber where Muzi waited. With a faint smile, he asked, Xiao Yer, what do you make of that young man? Muzi's gaze flicked toward the door where Ye Cheng had just departed. Trustworthy? Hardly. Everything about him feels like a fabrication. Yin Taishang chuckled softly. You're too quick to brand him a liar. His claims may be true, they simply sound impossible. Impossible, Muzi echoed, eyes narrowing. What are you getting at? Just yesterday, Yin Taishang began, leaning closer, we received word of a Xuanwang-level demon lord manifesting south of the Wanyao Sea. The rumor says a passing king-level cultivator dispatched it with a single sword strike. Muzi drew in a sharp breath. One sword? Slain in one blow? If my hunch is right, Yin Taishang went on, that demon lord is the same one now sealed inside Ye Cheng's storage ring. He lifted one of the pills Ye Cheng had handed over, Danwen grade, perfectly round, still faintly fragrant with fresh medicinal qi. Notice how flawless they are, how recent their refinement, No alchemist would store pills this pristine for years. They must have been concocted within the last 3 months. Muzi stared at the glowing pill, horror creeping into her expression. That can't be real. Muzi's heart pounded. Could everything Ye Cheng said really be true? Had he lied even once? It all sounded so preposterous. Perhaps she'd simply misunderstood him. 20 years old, King Realm level, Yin Taishang repeated with a sigh. A prodigy of that caliber has arrived in the Wanyao Sea. He looked down at her. Yer, if young Master Gu comes by again, you must give him your utmost respect. Gaining a friend like him would be a tremendous asset to the Mu family. Yin Taishang wasn't angry with her doubts. After all, the claim was staggering, a 20-year-old cultivator already at the King Realm, essentially on par with the highest spirit list experts, showing up in this remote southern sea. Understood, senior, Muzi managed, though her voice trembled. She still felt stunned. The South Sea of Wanyao had produced remarkable talents. One disciple of the Zhenwu sect had reached the Calamity Realm by age 20, but that achievement was worlds apart from Ye Cheng's. The difference wasn't merely one of level, but of an entirely different tier. As awe and apprehension mingled in her chest, Muzi worried. Had her earlier skepticism offended him? Yin Taishang leaned back in her ornate chair, a teasing light in her eyes. Xiao Yi, if I'm not mistaken, you're still unwed, aren't you? You can't be getting any younger. Muzi's cheeks flushed a delicate rose. She tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear. Master Yin, please stop joking. If there were any truth to that, I'd be too embarrassed to face you. Yin Taishang drummed her fingers on the lacquered table, then glanced at Ye Cheng, who stood quietly to one side. And this young master Ye Cheng is quite an admirable match. Even as a concubine, marrying someone of his talent and standing would be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for you. Laughing softly, she rose from her seat. But of course, I only speak in jest. With a graceful wave, she added, well, I won't keep you any longer. Before anyone could reply, Yin Taishang melted into thin air, her laughter lingering in the hush she left behind. Chapter 15. After leaving the Haiyue auction house, Ye Cheng didn't head straight back to the inn. With over 50,000 spirit stones jingling in his pouch, 10 times more than his entire family's net worth, he detoured to the bustling market to stock up on alchemical supplies. Truly, being an alchemist paid. Thanks to the Dan Emperor Heart Sutra and his Qinghuo Dan body, Ye Cheng's progress outpaced that of any ordinary practitioner. He was now comfortably refining elixirs up to the 3rd grade, and almost every batch reached the coveted Danwen tier, a level of consistency few 5th-grade Danhuangs could match. Though he hadn't yet earned the Danhuang title himself, his skill with low to mid-grade pills already surpassed many who carried it. Half an hour later, Ye Cheng emerged from the marketplace laden with nearly every herb and reagent he'd need, his total outlay nearly 20,000 spirit stones. He felt no pang of regret. After all, the greater the investment, the richer the reward. Excluding the portion he reserved for his own use, the pills refined from these medicinal herbs would be worth at least 100,000 spirit stones. Having completed his purchase, Ye Cheng set off to explore the winding lanes of Haiyue Island. Before long, he found himself standing in front of Ting Yushuan. Word on the street was that Ting Yushuan was the finest restaurant on the entire island, if not the whole South Sea. Founded over a millennium ago, its recipes had been passed down and perfected by successive pavilion masters. The dishes were not only exquisite in taste, but also renowned for their cultivation-enhancing properties. Every ingredient came from the rarest corners of the Wanyao South Sea, and it was said that a single meal there could equal half a month's worth of secluded training. Naturally, such quality commanded a high price. But for cultivators eager to gain an edge, the expense was more than justified. Ting Yushuan's 4-story pavilion could accommodate dozens of guests, with the spacious ground floor seating up to 100 diners. Here, anyone with enough spirit stones could step inside and savor the legend. Access to the upper floors of Ting Yushuan isn't something you can buy with spirit stones alone. Only those who have advanced to the 7th level of the Calamity Realm may ascend beyond the 2nd floor. There, the 3rd level caters to half-step King Realm cultivators, while the 4th is reserved for true King Realm masters. Each successive floor offers rarer, more exotic cuisine you'll never find on the ground level, culinary marvels that grow ever more extravagant as you climb. On the 4th floor, for example, even the Beast King level meat is on the menu. Ye Cheng hadn't yet broken through to King Realm, but his current power already eclipsed that of many Xuanwang Realm warriors who had only just entered the first tier of King Realm. Unfazed by the regulations, he went ahead and reserved private room No. 4 on the 4th floor. Then he sent a message to Gu Chinger, who was still resting at the inn, summoning her to join him. He'd worked hard to amass enough spirit stones. Of course, he planned to treat himself. And more than that, he was curious to see whether Tingyu Xuan's legendary dishes truly deserved their reputation for sustaining practitioners through weeks or even months of brutal training. A brief verification at reception confirmed his qualifications, and in moments, a jade token gifted him entry to the coveted private suite. With his prize in hand, Ye Cheng allowed himself a confident smile. Tonight, he would put Tingyu Xuan's finest specialties to the test and reward himself handsomely in the process. "Senior," the pavilion owner said with a wry smile, "you won't have to take the entrance test again on future visits. Just show this Tianzi token. And if I come across any rare ingredients, you'll be the first to know, assuming, of course, you're still roaming the Wanyao Sea." Heh. Master Han, himself a half-king level powerhouse, had personally escorted Ye Cheng up to the pavilion's 4th floor. Seeing him face to face, Han's astonishment lingered. A king-level warrior, and so young. Suppressing his surprise, Han bowed deeply and pressed a jade token engraved with the character Tian into Ye Cheng's hand, then withdrew with all due deference. King-level experts were exceedingly rare in the southern seas. Even Tingyu Pavilion might host only 1 or 2 in an entire year. They simply could not afford to treat such a guest lightly. Before stepping away, Han leaned close to his steward. "From now on, everything this young master orders gets a 30% discount. Make it standard." 30% off? The steward repeated in disbelief. At that rate, Tingyu Pavilion would lose money on every dish. Han glanced back over his shoulder, eyebrows raised. "He's only 20 and already at the King Realm. Do you understand what that implies?" At 20 years old, a cultivator who's reached the King Realm already shows the potential to one day challenge the Emperor Realm. Since its founding, the Tingyu Xuan Pavilion had never hosted an Emperor-level guest. For a sect of its caliber, securing regular visits from a King Realm expert like Ye Cheng would be more precious than any stockpile of spirit stones. After days of inquiry, Ye Cheng finally located the pavilion. He stood before a sprawling, palace-like complex, its ornate gates and jade pillars gleaming in the morning sun. His heart thumped with anticipation and a touch of nerves. Just as he lifted his foot to enter, a clear voice rang out behind him. "Ye Cheng?" He wheeled around to find Xu Sheng striding toward him, flanked by several young cultivators. Xu Sheng's eyes widened in astonishment. "Ye Cheng, is that really you?" For a moment, Ye Cheng simply stared. He hadn't expected to run into Xu Sheng here, especially at Tingyu Xuan. On Wangqin Island, only 3 great clans held sway: the Gu, the Shu, and the Kuai. He belonged to the Gu family, Xu Sheng to the Shu. To see him now standing before this legendary pavilion was the last thing Ye Cheng had imagined. "Xu Sheng?" Ye Cheng managed at last, his surprise mirrored in his friend's expression. Xu Sheng broke into a grin. "I never thought we'd meet here. What brings you to Tingyu Xuan?" Ye Cheng drew a steadying breath. "I've come to pay my respects, and to see if I might explore the pavilion's secrets." Behind them, the others exchanged excited glances. If Tingyu Xuan was truly opening its doors to King Realm cultivators, the news would send ripples through all 3 great families. But for now, Ye Cheng and Xu Sheng simply stood together beneath that majestic gate, old friends reunited at the threshold of something extraordinary. Xu Sheng stood before him, eldest son of the Shu family and one of Ye Cheng's most relentless admirers. Before Ye Cheng enlisted at Chengxin Pavilion, Xu Sheng had chased him relentlessly, like a stubborn piece of candy clinging to oxhide, never letting him out of his sight and driving him nearly mad with annoyance. It was only when Ye Cheng joined Chengxin Pavilion that he finally managed to shake the suitor off. He later heard Xu Sheng had moved on to a prominent sect, but Ye Cheng never cared enough to learn the details. He'd never returned Xu Sheng's feelings, and he had no intention of doing so now, or ever. Junior brother Su, a soft voice called from behind Xu Sheng, "Is this gentleman your friend?" A handsome youth stepped forward, gently smiling as he fixed his gaze on Ye Cheng with unmistakable admiration. His eyes glittered, clearly enchanted by Ye Cheng's presence. Xu Sheng cleared his throat and nodded. "Yes, allow me to introduce you. This is senior brother Tan Jun, and this is—" Xu Sheng's smile faltered as he watched Tan Jun's lingering look. Tan Jun was infamous throughout the sect for his playboy ways, leaving a trail of wounded junior and senior sisters in his wake. Xu Sheng frowned, uneasy at his brother's unguarded appraisal. Xu Sheng's grandfather was a high-ranking elder in the sect, so influential that even the elders themselves had to show him deference. Naturally, Xu Sheng felt uneasy at the thought of senior brother Tan getting too close to Ye Cheng, but since they'd already been formally introduced, it would be rude to refuse further contact. Ye Cheng stood quietly, saying nothing. The way senior brother Tan's eyes kept drifting to him made him deeply uncomfortable. He had no wish to mingle with these people. Noticing his restraint, Tan merely smiled and said, "It's been too long since we last met. Why not come up and reminisce? I've reserved the Xuan private room in Tingyu Pavilion. Ye Cheng, please join us." At the mention of the Xuan private room, a ripple of interest ran through the crowd. Tokens for that chamber were only issued by those backed by at least a 7th-level Calamity Realm expert, the late stage of the realm, a power few could claim. Tingyu Xuan was renowned throughout the South Sea's 10,000 Isles as one of the finest establishments around. Even junior disciples like Xu Sheng wouldn't normally gain entry to its private Xuan rooms on the 2nd floor. Yet here they were, all thanks to senior brother Tan's connections. As they conversed quietly in the hall, a maid descended the stairs and approached the lone figure of Ye Cheng. She inclined her head politely. "Pardon me, are you Mr. Ye Cheng?" He was about to correct her when he recognized her as the envoy sent by his brother. He met her gaze and nodded. "Yes." "Very good, sir." She bowed again and made a small gesture toward the staircase. "Please follow me up to the 4th floor." "4th floor?" Ye Cheng glanced back at senior brother Tan and Xu Sheng, and then shook his head. "No, thank you. My brother is expecting me here." Without waiting for a reply, he allowed the maid to lead him up the stairs. Behind him, senior brother Tan's expression darkened. "4th floor?" he muttered, glancing at Xu Sheng. Xu Sheng and the others exchanged stunned looks. They all remembered Tan's briefing before their arrival. Ordinary guests could reach only the 2nd floor, while the 3rd floor's private rooms were reserved strictly for the most prestigious patrons. Any talk of a 4th floor was mere rumor. Yet now, right before their eyes, Ye Cheng was being escorted upward, far beyond the bounds of what even senior brother Tan had arranged for them. Ordinary people, no matter how wealthy, can only ever reach the 1st floor. The 2nd floor is reserved for those with real strength, or for those backed by a 7th-level Calamity Realm master. To step onto the 3rd floor, you must be at least half a step into the King Realm. And the 4th floor. Xu Sheng's heart skipped. Who was allowed beyond the 3rd? Not just any King Realm cultivator, it took special connections to King Realm powerhouses to set foot on the 4th. He felt as if the world had flipped upside down. He knew Ye Cheng's family, a small, unremarkable clan from Wangqin Island without a single Tribulation Realm expert among them. How could they possibly qualify for the 4th floor? Yet the signs were unmistakable. Reluctant though he was, Xu Sheng had no choice but to accept it. Ye Cheng's family held some extraordinary bond with a King Realm master. Chapter 16. When Guqinger finally arrived on the 4th floor, she found the table already groaning under a veritable feast. Steam curled off platters of long-striped tail fish, aromatic bowls of deep shark head soup, glistening slices of purple orchid ginseng, and crisp jade-green fillets of southern region water monster meat, each ingredient rarer than the last, each rumored to cost hundreds or even thousands of spirit stones. Her eyes widened as she surveyed the spread. She'd never heard of half these delicacies, let alone tasted them. "Brother Ye Cheng," she murmured, voice trembling, "how many spirit stones did you spend on all this?" Ye Cheng, already poised with a pair of chopsticks, lifted a tender sliver of fish to his lips. He chewed thoughtfully before answering, "Roughly 2,000 spirit stones." 2,000? Chinger's chopsticks shook so violently she nearly dropped them. 2,000 spirit stones. More than she earned in months at Chenshin Pavilion, where the low-grade stones she gathered each month barely filled her purse. She swallowed hard, cheeks flaming as she took in the luxurious array before her. Ye Cheng glanced up, smiling at her astonished expression. "Don't worry," he said quietly. "Tonight we celebrate. Enjoy yourself." Still stunned, Chinger forced a small nod and reached for her chopsticks. Each perfectly prepared dish before her felt like a dream, and one she dared not wake from. 2,000 spirit stones. Even Gu Chinger, who'd grown up in a wealthy sect, nearly choked on her noodles when she saw the bill. "Hurry up and eat," she scolded, glancing anxiously at the server. "It's going to get cold." Ye Cheng merely chuckled and picked up his chopsticks. "Relax. I'm a king-tier expert now. 2,000 spirit stones for a meal is nothing to me." Gu Chinger fell silent. True enough, for someone of Ye Cheng's cultivation level, a few thousand stones was pocket change. With that settled, they turned their full attention back to the bowls before them. By the time they finished, Ye Cheng was leaning back, utterly content. The chefs at Ting Yushuan had outdone themselves. The broth was rich, the dumplings succulent. It was, without a doubt, the best meal he'd had since arriving in this world. Gu Chinger, still a little mortified by the cost, barely dared to breathe. But Ye Cheng wouldn't let her leave hungry. He kept ladling more soup into her bowl and shoving dumplings across the table. Just as Gu Chinger managed a grateful smile, Ye Cheng's expression shifted. He set down his chopsticks, eyes narrowing in concentration. Second lightning tribulation. It's approaching. A tremor of power ran through him. His spiritual energy had surged and stabilized at the peak of the spiritual realm. He'd completed the first level of the tribulation realm. He opened his eyes, a triumphant light dancing in their depths. That meal had been worth every single spirit stone. Beside him, Gu Chinger felt a rush of energy too, though as a true spirit realm practitioner, the boost was even more startling. She could only marvel at her brother's progress, and perhaps concede that the price had been justified. Ye Cheng, who had only just reached the early true spirit realm's first level, suddenly found himself breaking through to the second level, even before the last meal he'd eaten had finished digesting. Once his body fully absorbed those magical ingredients, he might well soar straight into the third level. He froze in place. In the past, each realm had taken him months, even longer once he'd entered the true spirit realm, where every advancement grew exponentially more difficult. He'd been stalled at early level 1 for over 2 months with no sign of progress. And now, one single meal had catapulted him all the way to level 2. If this kept up, how far could he climb with just a handful more of these ingredients? "Don't let your mind wander," his brother Ye Cheng chided, noticing the far-off look in his eyes. "These ingredients only pack a punch the first time you use them. Any later doses will yield steadily weaker returns, just like cultivation pills." Ye Cheng felt his cheeks grow warm. How could his brother possibly know what he was thinking? After dinner, Ye Cheng and his sister, Gu Chinger, made their way back to the inn, both of them eager for the auction to begin. In the days that followed, the Haiyue auction house spared no expense promoting the corpse of the Water Wolf King. Word spread quickly, and soon a steady stream of merchant ships and war junks arrived at Haiyue Island, among them several half-kings and other powerful figures from the surrounding seas. Ye Cheng could hardly contain his excitement. The more bidders there were, the higher the price would climb. At last, the day of the auction arrived. Early that morning, Ye Cheng and Gu Chinger joined the steadily growing line outside the auction house. Unlike many exclusive venues, Haiyue Auction House didn't offer VIP seating. Every guest, regardless of status, stood on equal footing until the bidding began. Once Ye Cheng secured his numbered paddle, they slipped inside. The interior revealed a grand staircase hall built around a central platform where the Water Wolf King's remains would be displayed. Despite its impressive architecture, the auction room could hold only about 1,000 people, making space both limited and fiercely contested. As one of the largest and most prestigious auction houses in these waters, Haiyue enforced strict entry standards. Only those with recognized strength or influence were granted admission. Ye Cheng exchanged a satisfied glance with his sister. Around them, nobles, captains, and half-kings jockeyed for position, murmuring excitedly about the legendary wolf's bones. With the crowd assembled and anticipation humming in the air, he knew the real battle for the corpse was about to begin, and he intended to come out on top. Ye Cheng gazed around the grand hall in awe. Everyone seated here represented the highest echelons of the nearby sea region powers, deacons, elders, even the lords of entire forces. This was his first time attending such an event, and he felt like a child discovering a new world. Clutching his bid card, number 188, he followed the usher to his assigned seat. A hush fell over the crowd as heavy curtains swept aside. On stage, Muzi appeared in a sweeping purple gown. She smiled, every step measured and graceful, until she reached the auction table. "Long time no see, everyone," she greeted, her voice warm and clear. "I'm honored to return as your auctioneer today." The moment she stood before them, a murmur rippled through the room. Muzi's dress clung to her curves, revealing just enough of her porcelain shoulders and smooth back to ignite the imaginations of every man present. Her flawless features and effortless poise only heightened her allure. A few younger bidders, who'd clearly come more for Muzi than the treasures on offer, shifted impatiently in their seats. Ye Cheng felt the change in atmosphere instantly. Those who'd been indifferent now fixed her with hungry gazes, as though willing her to dance just for them. She raised an inviting hand, and the room fell silent once more. "I won't keep you waiting," she promised, her eyes sparkling with the thrill of the sale to come. "Let's get straight to business." After a curt introduction, Muzi swept her jade-like hand through the air. In an instant, a delicate jade vial materialized on the auction table. Our first lot, a third-grade soul-shaping pill, imprinted with a twin crest design. It's renowned for its miraculous ability to heal even the gravest soul injuries. Opening bid, 300 spirit stones. Do I hear 300? A ripple passed through the hall. Though this elixir ranks only third grade, its ingredients are staggeringly rare, so rare that its market value often rivals fourth-grade pills. 800 spirit stones, a bidder called out. No sooner had Muzi noted the bid than a man garbed in black, holding placard No. 307 in the third row, cleared his throat. 500 spirit stones. His voice carried an edge of desperation. Ye Cheng watched him, noting the gaunt lines around the man's eyes, clear evidence of a severe soul wound. Without prompt treatment, he might not survive the month. 900 spirit stones, someone else countered. Then, 1,000. The gavel fell again. Yet Ye Cheng remained indifferent. He wasn't in the market for soul-shaping pills, nor, as the auctioneer announced the next lot, 3 formation flags, did he feel any urge to bid. He simply leaned back and observed the crowd as the contest for elixirs and enchantments continued around him. Ye Cheng scanned the auction roster. He still needed a third-grade spirit sword, but his turn hadn't come up yet. Of the 4 blades he'd already collected for his Xianxia sword formation, only 1 was third grade. The other 3 were second grade. Fourth-grade swords were notoriously scarce, so his plan was to assemble a full set of third-grade blades first. With 4 of them in formation, his combat power would climb dramatically. To break through to an entirely new level, he'd still need to acquire a 4th-grade sword, but that could wait a little longer. His attention shifted when the auctioneer announced the next lot. Item number 3, the Blood Spirit Fruit, a 3rd-grade spiritual fruit, prized as the chief ingredient for the Blood Essence pill and valued as a supplementary component in the Beauty pill. Opening bid, 1,100 spirit stones. Most cultivators only knew those 2 uses, but Ye Cheng's eyes gleamed with recognition. He had read about a 3rd application in the Pill Emperor's Heart Sutra, an ancient technique for refining the 9-turn purple gold pill. That legendary formula called for precisely this rare fruit, and if he could secure it here, tonight's auction might yield far more than he'd bargained for. The 9-turn purple gold pill was a prized 5th-grade elixir, more than Ye Cheng needed for himself, but exactly what his unborn son and daughter would require. He believed in giving his children every possible advantage, starting from the very moment they entered the world. So when the auctioneer presented the tray of glowing pills, Gu Chinger calmly raised paddle number 188. 1,500 spirit stones, Ye Cheng announced, securing the bid. Chapter 17. 1,300 spirit stones, bidder number 58. The auctioneer's call echoed through the hall. Nearly every hopeful here was a woman. After all, who wouldn't leap at a chance to become more beautiful and eternally youthful? The holder of placard number 258 was a striking beauty clad in blue. If Ye Cheng were grading on a scale of 1 to 100, he'd give her an 80, still trailing behind Muzi's elegant 91 and Gu Chinger's flawless 95. As for Zhang Lianxin, she was simply beyond comparison. 1,500 spirit stones, Ye Cheng announced, lifting his paddle with steady confidence. He would not let this blood spirit fruit slip away. The auctioneer paused. No, 188, 1,500 spirit stones. Any higher bids? Muzi caught sight of Ye Cheng and felt her heart flutter. He was unmistakable even in this crowded hall. 1,700 spirit stones, called out the woman in blue. Her brow furrowed with determination. She had assembled every other ingredient for her legendary beauty pill, hired a master alchemist, everything but this single fruit. 1,700? Someone whispered. Dongyan must be incredibly wealthy. Could she be the Mo family's young master's fiancée? Tension rippled through the bidders as they waited for the next move. Ye Cheng's eyes never left the placard in her hand. The fight for the blood spirit fruit was only just beginning. How can she not be rich? A murmur swept through the crowd. Everyone here recognized the young woman in blue, Dongyan of the Dong family on Haiyue Island. By itself, the Dong family was nothing spectacular, just a minor clan with 2 or 3 early-stage Calamity Realm cultivators. But Dongyan's true standing was far more formidable. She was fiancée to the young master of the Mo family, one of the 5 semi-king households that effectively controlled both the Haiyue auction house and the island itself. That alliance alone was enough to make even powerful factions tread carefully around her. 2,000 spirit stones, Ye Cheng announced coolly, lifting his bidding paddle once more. A collective gasp rose from the onlookers. The market price for a blood spirit fruit hovered around 1,500 spirit stones. Dongyan's earlier bid of 1,700 had already raised eyebrows. Yet here was this unassuming young man, apparently ignorant of her pedigree, and apparently completely unconcerned, willing to pay 2,000 on the spot. Such audacity not only cemented his reputation for wealth, but sent a clear signal. Ye Cheng intended to win this auction, no matter the cost. Chapter 12. The Blood Spirit Fruit Auction. Even among rare treasures, the blood spirit fruit was legendary, and yet the current bid had already climbed to 2,000 spirit stones. Who would ever have guessed it would reach such a staggering sum? Ye Cheng sat among the spectators, unmoved by the murmurs around him. He'd put up the bid without hesitation, and though he had the funds, the onlookers whispered that he was nothing more than a flashy fool with too much money and nowhere to spend it. Lot 47, Blood Spirit Fruit, 2,000 spirit stones, the auctioneer called. A ripple of astonishment ran through the hall. 2,000 spirit stones for a single enchanted fruit? It seemed impossible. Behind him, a pair of refined emerald-green eyes narrowed. Dongyan rose from her seat. She belonged to the minor but ambitious Dong family, and she was engaged to the Mo family's heir, a prestigious match that lent her more confidence than her birth warranted. 2,300 spirit stones, she declared, her voice clear and unwavering. A murmur of approval and derision swept the room. 2,300 was her absolute limit. If anyone dared to top her bid, she'd have no choice but to step back. But she refused to lose. The blood spirit fruit was the key ingredient for the legendary beauty pill she had waited months to forge. Would she find another anytime soon? Maybe in half a year, maybe a year. No one knew. She took a deliberate step toward the podium. "Sir," she said, raising her voice so everyone could hear, "this fruit is vital to me. I've invested everything in its pursuit. I beg you, let me have it." A few bidders exchanged sneers. "Look," one whispered, "the Dong fiancée thinks she can buy the whole world." But they all knew Dongyan's status, fiancée to the Mo family's young master. In Cultivation Society, that rank carried weight. If she truly invoked her fiancé's name, who could challenge her? Silence fell as she waited. The room braced for Ye Cheng's next move. Would he raise the stakes, or would he let the rightful, or at least the wealthier bidder, claim the blood spirit fruit? Dongyan's display of authority wasn't so much an independent power play as it was a veiled threat backed by the Mo family. Deep down, she hated bullying others, but the blood spirit fruit was far too precious to let slip through her fingers. A treasure like that only appeared once in a lifetime, and she wasn't about to surrender it. Standing beside Ye Cheng, a gray-robed monk from the island leaned in and whispered, "Young Master Ye Cheng, you don't look like a native of Haiyue Island. The Dong clan on its own is insignificant, but Dongyan is engaged to the young master of the Mo family, one of the island's 5 semi-king houses. Sacrificing your pride over a single medicinal fruit? It isn't worth offending them. You'd be wise to back down now." The monk's advice came from more than politeness. He'd noticed Ye Cheng's unfamiliar bearing and rightly guessed he was unaware of Dongyan's formidable connections. Ye Cheng's jaw tightened, but he gave no answer. High above them, on the auction dais, Muzi watched the exchange in silence. By all rights, Dongyan's tactics violated the auction house's strict rules against coercion. Yet Muzi neither reprimanded her nor intervened. She simply observed, her expression unreadable, as the tension in the hall reached a boiling point. Dongyan opened her mouth to issue a warning, but Yin Taishan cut her off with a raised hand and a cool smile. Haiyue Island is small enough already. Dividing these profits among 5 families is pushing it. His words struck home. Across the hall, at seat number 188, Ye Cheng sat unmoved. Dongyan's thinly veiled threat rolled off him like water off a duck's back. The Dong family? The Mo family? Even if all 5 semi-king houses on Haiyue Island ganged up on him, what did he have to fear? Calmly, Ye Cheng lifted his bidding paddle. 2,300 spirit stones. Originally, 2 blood spirit fruits had been on the auction block, but one had already been claimed. Only this single fruit remained. Dongyan glared at him, clearly coveting it, but Ye Cheng felt no urge to compete. He simply wanted to assert his position. 2,300 spirit stones, he repeated. Is there anyone willing to bid higher? The auction hall fell silent. After a long moment, Muzi cleared his throat and looked around once more. Still no one spoke. The tension in the air was palpable as all eyes turned back to Ye Cheng, eager to see who, if anyone, would dare to outbid him. 2,300 spirit stones, the auctioneer called out. 2,300, going twice. 2,300 sold. Congratulations to bidder number 188 for securing the blood spirit fruit at 2,300 spirit stones. Dongyan's face drained of color. Watching Ye Cheng raise his paddle, she felt her chest tighten as anger swelled within her. Gritting her teeth, she managed, "I'll remember you." But Ye Cheng didn't even spare her a glance. From start to finish, he treated her as nothing more than an annoying fly. If not for wanting to keep this auction on track, and with the prized Waterwolf King still up for bid, he might very well have slapped Dongyan down to affirm his authority. A mere upstart dared to challenge him? The thought alone was enough to rile him. He'd assumed that after Muzi, IE's last ruling, the matter was closed. Yet just as he relaxed his shoulders, a ripple of whispers swept through the crowd at the far end of the pavilion. A young man draped in a sleek black robe embroidered with gold thread strode forward, his bearing both calm and commanding. "Young Master Mo hao bai," someone called out. Suddenly, dozens of pairs of eyes turned toward the newcomer, curiosity and anticipation flickering on their faces. The auction was far from over. "Now there's something worth watching." Mo hao bai appeared out of nowhere and strode straight to Dongyan's side. "Why are you here?" he demanded. Dongyan's eyes widened. Before the auction began, she'd invited her fiancé to join her, but he'd claimed to be busy, and she never expected to see him now. "I wrapped up my business early," he said, shrugging. Then his gaze fell on her troubled expression. "What's wrong? Who's giving you a hard time?" She glanced in the direction of Ye Cheng. Mo hao bai followed her look, his brow darkening. "Speak up. Who dares bully my woman? Are they looking for trouble?" With an indignant pout, Dongyan recounted the incident, perhaps a little more dramatically than the facts warranted. "Can you believe it? Here on Haiyue Island, someone actually had the nerve to ignore Mohalbai and insult the Mo family. Mohalbai's jaw clenched. He patted her shoulder reassuringly. "Sit tight. I'll sort this out." Just then, the auctioneer announced the next lot. 5 stalks of blue star grass, starting at 1,300 spiritual stones. Ye Cheng rose smoothly and placed his paddle on the table. 1,500 spiritual stones, he declared. 2,000 spiritual stones. Mohalbai announced calmly, raising his bidding paddle. Where just moments before dozens of would-be bidders had jockeyed for position, now every paddle dropped in unison. No one dared challenge the young master of the Mo family on Haiyue Island. I shifted my gaze to Ye Cheng and suppressed a grim smile. So this was the real spectacle. Poor Ye Cheng, he'd never known when to pick his fights, much less how to stand up to the Mo clan. They'd already planted observers everywhere. Every gesture, every glance was being recorded. Defying the Mo family here was practically signing one's own death warrant. I couldn't help but wonder if he'd make it off the island alive. Chapter 18, 2,100 spirit stones, Ye Cheng announced, his tone calm but firm. Before he could settle, a sharper voice cut through the hall. 2,500 spirit stones. Mohalbai's bid rang clear. Ye Cheng glanced at his rival, then at Dongyan standing beside Mohalbai. She wore a self-satisfied smile, as if to say, "Aren't you well heeled? Go on, raise it again." Ye Cheng met her gaze for a moment, then turned back to Mohalbai without increasing his own offer. "Are you defending her?" he asked coolly. Mohalbai scoffed. "This is an auction. Those with deep pockets hold the power. Feel free to up the ante. I've plenty of spirit stones to waste." He raised his chin, voice dripping with arrogance. "Mark my words, today you'll learn that not everyone on Haiyue Island can be crossed without consequence. I am Mohalbai. If you have the ability, come and try me." A hush fell over the crowd. Ye Cheng let a slow smile spread across his face. In a blur, his long sword shimmered into being, the steel breathing light. With a single fluid motion, he swept the blade toward Mohalbai. The dazzling arc of sword light lit up half the hall. The intricate runes of the auction formation overhead flared wildly, sparks dancing across the ceiling. Then came the thunderous crack. Mohalbai's protective talismans, emergency wards meant to shield him in dire moments, exploded in a volley of tearing charms. Instinctively, he jerked his arm back, narrowly avoiding a blow that would have severed it. Silence reigned for a heartbeat. Then the crowd stirred, awed and terrified by the deadly precision of Ye Cheng's strike. The auctioneer's gavel hovered midair, the bids forgotten as everyone realized a simple sale had turned into a battle of wills. Mohalbai's face went white as a sheet, terror coursing through his veins. A tense silence fell over the auction hall. No one had expected Ye Cheng to draw his sword in the middle of the sale, much less threaten the young master of the Mo family, one of the 5 great semi-king lineages on Haiyue Island. The residual sword chi still hummed in the air, constricting every breath in the room. But Ye Cheng made no move for a second strike. Instead, he sheathed his blade with deliberate calm and fixed Mohalbai with an icy stare. "You must be pretty flush with spirit stones," he said, his voice low but carrying to every corner of the hall. "Why don't you prove it? Raise the price." He leaned back, clearly growing impatient. "Come on, if you've got the guts, bid again." At once, the crowd erupted into frantic whispers. One drawn sword and a single challenge had laid bare the stakes. Anyone who dared outbid Ye Cheng, even a Mo family scion, risked his life. Dongyan, overwhelmed by the sudden violence, slid to the floor, shaking, wide-eyed, and too frightened to move. Dongyan's heart was still pounding from the sheer force of Ye Cheng's sword. Thankfully, he hadn't been aiming at her. If that blade had turned her way instead of Mohalbai, she didn't even have half as many life-saving talismans as he did. The thought was too humiliating to bear. Mohalbai, meanwhile, was nursing more than wounded pride. The moment he'd threatened that Ye Cheng wouldn't be allowed to take a single photograph on Haiyue Island, Gu had answered with a brutal backhand. The slap echoed so sharply that it took Mohalbai several heart-stopping seconds to recover. He glared at Ye Cheng, his face a mask of fury and fear, but not a word escaped his lips. He knew better than to trust that Gu wouldn't actually kill him. A slow, contemptuous smile curled on Ye Cheng's lips. He took a deliberate step forward, letting his voice carry across the stunned group. My name is Ye Cheng. I'll be on Highway Island a day or two. Don't say later that I didn't give you a chance to settle your score. He paused, the temperature around him seeming to drop. But mark my words, if you fail to kill me, I will annihilate your entire family. A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers. Ye Cheng's calm, deadly promise left them all in no doubt but one. He was utterly, terrifyingly serious. This time, the threat wasn't aimed only at Mo Haobai. It was a direct challenge to the Mo family itself, one of the 5 semi-king houses on Highway Island. A hush fell over the auction hall. Even the assembled semi-kings exchanged uneasy glances. Who among them would dare provoke a clan that ranked 3rd among the island's great houses, a family led by not 1 but 2 semi-kings? When the bidding resumed, Ye Cheng swept up every lot he set his sights on. The memory of his earlier confrontation with Mo Haobai left the field clear. No one, least of all the Mo heir, dared stand against a man now reputed for his utter ruthlessness. Item after item, the Waterwolf King's carcass, its jagged fangs, dense bones, iridescent pelt, and even its vital organs, fell to Ye Cheng without a single rival bid. By the time the hammer fell for the last time, he had spent 130,000 spirit stones. He leaned back in his chair, thoroughly pleased. Mo Haobai and his companion Dongyan slipped away long before the final tally. Too wounded in pride to stay, they vanished into the crowd. Once back at the Mo estate, Haobai wasted no time. He hurried straight to his father, determination etched on his face. The challenge of Ye Cheng and the Mo family's newfound humiliation could not go unanswered. Mo Haobai had never before felt such crushing humiliation. If he didn't strike back, how could he ever hold his head high on Highway Island again? Yet when he turned to the Mo family patriarch, expecting fury or outrage, he was met with an almost serene composure. "Father?" Mo Haobai ventured, bewildered by his father's silence. The old man remained calm. When he finally spoke, his tone was neither angry nor sympathetic. It was quietly reproachful. "Haobai, you're no longer a child. You're the rightful heir to the Mo family. If you behave like this, how can I ever trust you to lead our clan? Spending all day with those worthless friends won't win you any respect." Mo Haobai stared at him, stunned. His father wasn't merely chastising him. He was questioning his very suitability to inherit the family's legacy. The thought stabbed at Mo Haobai's pride. This was about more than personal honor. It was the reputation of the entire Mo family. If their heir couldn't even defend his own dignity, how could the family's name command respect? Who would ever dare stand by them, much less fear them? Seeing his son's shocked expression, the patriarch's disappointment deepened. He pressed his lips together, as if scolding himself for having to speak so harshly. Silence fell between them, heavy with unspoken expectations, and a challenge that Mo Haobai could no longer ignore. Over the past few years, the family patriarch had been so consumed by clan affairs that he'd almost forgotten to oversee Mo Haobai's cultivation and discipline. Now, standing in his father's study, Mo Haobai listened as the elder's frustration boiled over. "Use what little brain you've got," the patriarch snapped, leaning forward. "At 20 years old, Haobai, you should be at least in the early calamity realm, maybe even the middle stage. How could any ordinary sect produce such a genius? They must be powerful beyond imagination." He paused, then continued more quietly. "And yet someone dares come to Highway City and threaten our Mo family? Do you understand how reckless that is? Who do you think you are, disturbing the Mo name on our own lands?" Mo Haobai opened his mouth to reply, but found himself speechless under his father's glare. The patriarch shook his head as if disappointed. "You're growing up now, Haobai, and one day this clan may be in your hands. If someone like that, who treats our domain with such contempt, remains at large, the Mo family won't last long in this sea area." With that, the patriarch turned and strode from the room, leaving Mo Haobai rooted to the spot, his heart pounding. Once the elder's footsteps faded, he forced himself to breathe evenly. He recalled the unshakable calm of Ye Cheng at the auction house. The man had never betrayed so much as a twitch of emotion, even when confronting the entire Mo family's wrath. There could only be 2 explanations for someone bold enough to threaten the Mo clan on its own ground. The first, the stranger simply didn't care about the Mo family at all. Secondly, Ye Cheng must be a fool. His head simply isn't working. But then again, Could someone who's advanced to the catastrophe realm by his early 20s really be that clueless? In that instant, Mo Haobai realized just how stupid he himself had been. Chapter 19. Over the next 2 days, Ye Cheng saw no need to rush away from Haiyue Island. After collecting his spirit stones from the auction house, he and Gu Qinger made their way back to the inn. He wasn't loitering in hopes of a Mo family ambush, quite the opposite. Their grudge had never weighed on him, and if they truly sought revenge, he had no qualms about wiping them from the island. He believed in giving his foes one last chance to walk away. If they refused, so be it. In truth, what kept him here was his alchemy. With a sizable cache of rare ingredients at his disposal, Ye Cheng intended to refine every pill he could before leaving, sparing himself any future detours for supplies. From dawn to dusk, the inn's small alchemy room was filled with the hiss of steaming condensers and the soft glow of simmering crucibles as he worked. On the evening of the second day, he finally placed the last elixir vial on the shelf. A satisfied smile curved his lips as he turned to Gu Qinger. "We're done," he said. "Let's pack up and go." They gathered their belongings and stepped into the corridor, ready to depart the island once and for all. Just as Ye Cheng reached for the door latch, a sudden roar echoed up the stairs, followed by the unmistakable clatter of armor and weapons. Both he and Gu Qinger froze. Someone was coming, and they weren't alone. Ye Cheng hovered at the cliff's edge on Haiyue Island, gazing up as the once calm sky suddenly filled with swirling black mist. From that gloom emerged dozens of figures clad in shadowy robes, each astride a winged beast. They swept down upon Haiyue City like a plague of locusts, each one a half-step king. At their head stood 2 elders, one in ink-black robes, the other in snow-white. Their auras rippled with an unfathomable depth, as if they drew power straight from the abyss. Ye Cheng's senses, honed by years of disciplined cultivation, pricked at once. These 2 were no ordinary half-kings. They had reached the pinnacle of that realm, half-king perfection. His heart pounded. Crossing the threshold into true kingship required only one more step, yet the power concentrated here was beyond anything he had encountered. Scanning the southern expanse of the Wanyao Sea, he realized this duo must command a force of overwhelming might. Beneath them, more than 10 other half-kings hovered, their presences bristling with lethal intent. On the ground, the black-cloaked invaders fanned out, shrouding all of Qiangming Island in their suffocating fog. In unison, they wove a forbidden formation whose intricate lines of energy sparked and hissed under the oppressive sky. From his vantage point, Ye Cheng felt its malevolent pulse press against his soul. The elder in black robes surveyed the city below with an impassive gaze. His lips curled into a faint, inscrutable smile, one that promised the coming storm would spare no one. Ye Cheng steadied himself. He was alone, outnumbered, and facing opponents who dwarfed even the greatest half-kings he had known. Yet he would not cower. With a deep breath, he prepared to challenge fate itself. Ye Cheng and the white-robed elder both hailed from the southern reaches of the Wanyao Sea, members of the formidable Wu Yueshuan sect. Though the sect boasted no true king-level masters, both of them had already ascended to the pinnacle of half-king power. Beneath their command were more than 10 other half-kings. By contrast, the 5 half-king families of Haiyue Island, while impressive in number, were far weaker. They fielded 8 or 9 half-kings in all, but most hovered in the mid-stage. Only 2 had reached the late stage of half-king cultivation, and none had yet perfected that final leap. Within moments, Qiangming Island lay utterly sealed by their formation. A roiling veil of inky black fog encircled the land, cutting it off from every approach. One unfortunate cultivator, no more than a true spirit realm wanderer, tried to flee, charging headlong into the suffocating gloom. His scream, twisted with terror, hoed through the mist before abruptly cutting off. Moments later, a foundation-establishing disciple in black robes emerged carrying what remained of the unfortunate man, a shriveled, lifeless husk. All of Ye Cheng's blood had been drained, leaving behind only his empty corpse, and even his storage pouch was gone. At the sight, the cultivators on Haiyue Island erupted into panic. What's happening? Who's blocking the island? Several foreign cultivators, who had been preparing to depart, now stood frozen with anxiety. In an instant, nearly 10 figures streaked out toward the island's edge. They were the half-king masters from the 5 great half-king families of Haiyue, their reputations well known throughout Haiyue City. Leading them was the venerable Wang family patriarch, his brow knitted in concern as he confronted the black-robed intruders, sealing off the island's exits. The Wang elder's voice rang out, deep and authoritative. "Explain yourselves. What's going on here?" The black-robed leader floated down from above, a slow, mocking smile on his face. "Hand over the artifact," he replied casually. "Artifact?" The Wang elder's eyes flicked with suspicion. "What are you talking about? What artifact? What do you mean by that?" The black-robed elder's eyes narrowed to slits. "Don't play dumb with me. You're on Shengyuan Island. Surely you know what I'm talking about." "We're Shengyuan Island." Patriarch Wang's calm mask cracked for a brief moment, revealing genuine shock. "How is that possible? How did you find out?" Just weeks ago, Wang had unearthed a jade tablet in the ruins off Shengming Island in the southern seas. According to legend, it once belonged to a king-level cultivator who fell in Wanyao Nanhai, and it was believed to be the very key that could unlock the secret cave. The moment he secured it, Wang had sworn himself to secrecy, sharing the discovery with no one, not even his own family. Yet here stood these mysterious black-robed figures, claiming knowledge of the tablet's existence. It made no sense. "Patriarch Wang," the elder insisted, his tone icy, "you owe us an explanation." Around them, the half-kings of the other great clans on Haiyue Island exchanged uneasy glances. They'd long cooperated to guard the island's interests, but trusted each other no further than courtesy demanded. Now, with this unexpected revelation hanging in the air, suspicion simmered beneath every polite nod and measured greeting. "What exactly is going on?" one of the half-kings finally demanded, his voice betraying his apprehension. Patriarch Wang swallowed hard, realizing that whatever he said next could ignite old rivalries, or worse, invite the wrath of forces he barely understood. A squad of figures in black robes drifted across the sky, cutting off all access to Haiyue Island. Below them, the Wang family's patriarch stood unmoved, his face a mask of serene indifference. He let out a cold snort. "I'm not sure what they think they know." Despite his calm, he wouldn't admit to having drawn these strangers here. Floating above him, the eldest of the black-robed group let out a low, contemptuous laugh. "Save your excuses," he said. "Once he's dead, everything he owns becomes ours. And you," he turned to the Wang family head, "seal the island. Don't let a single soul escape." This wasn't just any treasure hunt. It concerned the hidden cave and legendary inheritance of a king-level powerhouse. There was no margin for error. Better to slay every last inhabitant than risk a leak. Although the Wu Xuan sect had never courted evil, today they would have to embrace it. The white-robed elder frowned as he regarded the distant island. "We can wipe out the Wang family and seize the jade token," he began, "but slaughtering every monk on Haiyue Island? That's reckless. If word of this massacre reaches the king-tier sects in Wanyao Nanhai, they'll unite against us." The elder in black robes let out a cold laugh. "So they'll be angry. Let them be. Once we recover that king-tier strongman's cave and rise to the cave, Injing level ourselves, the Wu Xuan sect will stand among the most powerful forces in the world. Who'll dare to oppose us then?" He tapped his robes dismissively. "And if those sects really come after us, we'll slip away, beyond Wanyao Nanhai, even past the Wanyao Sea. At the king level, there's no place we can't reach." They spoke openly, their resolve fierce. Far below them, the monks moving through the island market were oblivious to the fate that awaited them. In that moment, the black-robed elder's aura shifted, cold, merciless intent radiating outward and blanketing every monk on Haiyue Island like a shadow of imminent death. The white-robed elder sighed, his shoulders slumping. "Very well," he conceded. "Wu Xuan sect will act in concert." Ever since word spread of a hidden cave said to hold the legacy of a King Realm powerhouse, and with it, the secret to ascending to the King Realm, every cultivator on Haiyue Island understood its value. This was truly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Boom! Boom! 2 half-king perfects standing guard at the cave's entrance unleashed their combined might in an instant. Their pressure rolled outward like storm clouds, blotting out the sky above the island. Black mist congealed into writhing serpents that coiled around the shoreline, flicking poisonous tongues and glaring with cold triangular eyes that glowed with runic energy. Even a mid-stage half-king cultivator would have no chance of breaking through this barrier. This pressure, it's too strong. Genuine half-king perfects, someone gasped. Half-king perfects? We're finished, another cried. It's over, completely over. Had only several half-king cultivators arrived, even those in their late stages, the 5 great families of Haiyu Island might still have found a way to fight back if they pooled their resources. But real half-king perfects? That was beyond any of them. Faces drained of color, fear rippled through the crowd. Merchants and independent cultivators from distant regions who had come seeking trade now seethed with frustration and despair. Their hopes of profit lay in ruins, held captive by the impenetrable might of these 2 half-king perfect guardians. As soon as the cultivators learned that the black-robed elder intended to slaughter everyone on the island, panic swept through the crowd. You've got a grudge against the Wang family. Go after them. Why involve the rest of us? One disciple shouted. We're outsiders, another added. We came only for the auction in Haiyu City. We have nothing to do with the Wang family. Please, let us leave in peace. Their voices rose in desperation, but no one answered. High above them, the black-robed elder and a white-robed companion floated motionless, their expressions unreadable. It was clear they intended to carry out their threat without mercy. Among the onlookers were many semi-king disciples. Some had simply been passing through, heard of the rare auction on Haiyu Island, and come to take a look. None expected to be caught in such a calamity, but the pair in the sky paid no heed. With a flick of their hands, they wove a powerful formation barrier that sealed off every exit on the island. Any cultivator who tried to slip through the fringes of the barrier was met with ruthless force. Within moments, several independent disciples fell beneath the elder's spells, their lives extinguished. Fear gripped the surviving meditators. The auction had turned into a death trap, and escape was now impossible. Are you really planning to silence me? Outside the inn, Ye Cheng tilted his head back and stared at the afternoon sky, frustration etched on his face. He had intended only to leave this place with Gu Chinger. End of story. But fate seemed determined to lock him into someone else's vendetta. The old man in the flowing black robe glanced at Ye Cheng and shrugged, his tone dismissive. I'm not interested in your quarrels, the elder said. I know nothing of whatever history you have with the Wang family. This is a dispute between you and them. Why drag me, or anyone else, into it? Ye Cheng frowned. By anyone else, the man meant Ye Cheng himself. The islanders' lives were collateral damage in a feud that had no bearing on him. All Ye Cheng wanted was to get Chinger to safety and be out of everyone's hair. Yet word of his presence had already rippled through the small crowd gathered around the inn. They recognized him instantly. The bold young man who had brazenly threatened Mo Hao Bai, and, by extension, the entire Mo family during that explosive auction. What amazed them most was that after such a stunt, he'd walked away unscathed. Murmurs rippled through the assembly until 2 familiar faces broke from the crowd, Mu Zi and Yin Taishang. Both had been gripped by despair, convinced that Ye Cheng had slipped off the island hours ago. But now, seeing him alive and defiantly upright, hope rekindled in their eyes. Because if Ye Cheng really had left for good, then all of them would truly be lost. Tribulation Realm? A figure in a black robe drifted down from the sky, his gaze locking onto Ye Cheng. The boy was barely more than a youth, hardly the age one would expect to breach the Tribulation Realm. Below them, Mu Zi and Yin Taishang exchanged anxious looks. If this elder nodded in approval, none would leave the island alive. Life is fickle, the robed man said, voice calm and unwavering. Reaching the Tribulation Realm at your age marks you as exceptionally gifted, yet fortune seldom heeds our merits. Today, no one departs this island, no matter how powerful, not even a king-level genius. Ye Cheng's eyes flashed with defiance. You really won't let me go? A dry, humorless chuckle drifted back. The elder's faint smile needed no words. They all understood why. The Wu Xuan sect had raised Haiyu Island in a merciless bid to claim the key to the king-level strongman's cave. Now, to safeguard their prize, they intended to silence every living witness. Innocence would not be spared. Any survivor risked being cut down without mercy. In the annals of martial cultivation, Death had always trailed in power's wake. If you're looking for someone to blame, blame them for the miserable lives they've led. Fine, Ye Cheng said with a shrug. He had no desire to wade into this mess, but he had no choice. He fixed his gaze on the old man in the black robe. I only hope you won't come to regret this, the robed elder warned, his voice low and steady. Regret? Nothing I've ever done in my life leaves me feeling sorry, Ye Cheng replied, his tone clipped. Before the old man could finish speaking, his expression shifted in terror. A chilling aura of death coiled around him, and his pupils snapped wide. In that instant, Ye Cheng's figure blurred into the form of a shining spirit sword soaring toward the sky, razor-sharp, unstoppable, aimed straight at the elder. Jushin sword formation, activate, Ye Cheng intoned. A single thunderous slash echoed through the air. It was a kill shot. Chapter 20. A low hum resonated through the air. Ye Cheng's sword flash struck before the black-robed elder even had time to register the attack. In that instant, the elder's eyes widened in alarm, but the blade moved too swiftly for him to dodge. The brilliant white light of the sword washed over him, then vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. The air shivered, and the black-robed figure simply dissolved into nothingness, leaving no trace behind. Silence fell across Hyua Island and its surrounding waters. A half-step King Realm master, so close to true King Realm perfection, had been cut down in a single, unfaltering strike. This was no ordinary opponent. It was a powerhouse who'd been feared by all. Everyone stared at Ye Cheng in stunned awe. Whispers rippled through the crowd. We've heard legends of such speed, but to see it in action? Ye Cheng stood calmly, his sword still raised. He glanced at the spot where the elder had stood, pondering silently. If regret had crossed the elder's mind in his final moment, Ye Cheng would never know. But one thing was certain, the elder had lived and died underestimating him. He kicked himself for his carelessness, and even more so for letting Ye Cheng walk away unchecked. If he'd only detained him back then, would he even be alive now? Isn't he supposed to be a King Realm cultivator? Yin Taishang's unease turned to outright panic. He'd always taken Ye Cheng to be at the King Realm level. Yet the aura Ye Cheng had just unleashed was unmistakably only early Calamity Realm. And that only made the shock worse. If Ye Cheng were truly a King Realm powerhouse, then felling a half-step king, even a perfected one, wouldn't be so astonishing. But he wasn't a King Realm at all. He was early Calamity. And in a single stroke, he dispatched a perfected half-king cultivator. It was impossible, yet it had just happened. Below them, Mo Haobai, young master of the Mo clan, gaped in disbelief. A nameless dread swelled in his chest, and his limbs shook. Not long ago, he'd been poised to teach Ye Cheng a lesson, unaware of just how outmatched he was. Mess with a king-level powerhouse? Did he take pleasure in courting death? Good thing father put me in my place when I got carried away. Mo Haobai's heart pounded as he replayed the memory. If the Mo clan had truly struck back at Ye Cheng that day, the fallout would have been unthinkable. Every participant in the auction remembered Ye Cheng's spectacle, the icy disdain he projected in the Grand Hall, the way he dared to threaten Mo Haobai himself, an heir of one of Hyue Island's 5 semi-king families. Back then, they all assumed he wouldn't leave the island alive, but now the truth was plain to see. Ye Cheng had slain a semi-king with a single, flawless stroke. Who in their right mind would still challenge him? The spectators who had once whispered doubts now realized how utterly outmatched the great families were. As long as the Mo clan kept its distance, this incident would fade. Yet, if they ever dared to stir trouble for Ye Cheng again, there was no doubt he could, and would, annihilate the entire family without breaking a sweat. Everyone finally understood why the Mo family hadn't made a move after Ye Cheng announced he would remain on Hyue Island for 2 days. It wasn't that they'd been caught off guard, it was that they dared not act. Those who had once mocked the Mo clan as cowards now realized they themselves had been the true fools. Run! No one could believe what just happened. With a single fluid stroke of his sword, Ye Cheng had cut down the black-robed elder. More than 10 half-king cultivators of Wuwei Xuanzong, among them a fully realized half-king in white robes, stood frozen for a heartbeat. Their first thought wasn't to unite and slay Ye Cheng in retaliation, it was to flee. In an instant, they dispersed into streaks of light, vanishing from sight. Below on Haiyue Island, spectators were left gaping. These men in black had thundered threats to blockade the island and slaughter every living thing upon it. And yet they'd run? Then they recalled the sight of Ye Cheng's sword, his aura soaring with the might of a king-level cultivator, and everything made sense. Confronting him meant certain death, so they fled. Will Ye Cheng really let them slip away? He asked himself. Murder is murder. Wiping out the whole lot leaves no loose ends. With that thought, the 4 spirit swords anchoring the formation shot forward like meteors. In a heartbeat, more than a dozen half-kings lay dead. Only one figure remained standing, a white-robed elder, a perfected half-king. He collapsed to his knees before Ye Cheng, desperation in his eyes. "Please spare me, senior," the elder gasped, voice trembling. "I am the Grand Elder of the Wuyue Xuan sect. I will serve as your ox and horse. Just let me live." Ye Cheng's expression remained cold, but the elder's plea gave him pause. The Gu family had only one cultivator at the king realm, Jiang Lianxin, a demoness still far from true king-level power, her advancement further delayed by pregnancy. If she ventured out alone, the clan would be left without any second king-level support. Yet this white-robed elder, though not a king, had reached perfection at the half-king threshold. Guiding him to full king-level cultivation would be well within Ye Cheng's ability and would shore up the family's defenses in a way Jiang Lianxin currently could not. "Explain yourself," Ye Cheng said at last, his tone measured. "Why should I spare you?" The elder bowed so low his forehead nearly brushed the marble floor. "My sect's survival depends on me," he stammered. "Allow me to serve the Gu family. I swear my life, my cultivation, my very soul, to you." Ye Cheng studied him a moment longer, the slain half-king's spirit lights flickering out behind them. Then he nodded. "Very well. Swear an oath of unbreakable loyalty to the Gu family. Betray us, and you will learn firsthand how fleeting mercy can be." Tears of relief stained the elder's white robes as he knelt and swore his vow. Ye Cheng turned away, already mapping out the path by which this new pawn would ascend to the king realm and secure the Gu family's strength for the trials to come. In the Dan Emperor's Heart Sutra, there lay an ancient 4th-grade alchemical formula, the 3-yuan barrier-breaking pill. Legend claimed it could dramatically improve one's chances of shattering the elusive king's threshold. Ye Cheng had already refined 3 of these pills, but given his prodigious talent, he had no need to use them himself. They were meant as a safeguard for those less gifted, his father, the first elder, even the second elder, all of whom could take one upon reaching the 9th level of the Calamity Realm. Now, however, the crisis in front of him left Ye Cheng no choice but to deploy his reserves sooner than expected. He reached into the folds of his robe and produced a single glossy black pill. "I'm feeling generous," he said coolly. "Take this, and I may yet let you live." The old man in the white robe studied the pill for a heartbeat, then, fear outweighing all else, swallowed it without hesitation. No doubt he believed a moment's hesitation could cost him his life. The instant the pill slid down his throat, he felt an unseen force clamp around his soul, as if a colossal hand had suddenly seized him, leaving him trembling in Ye Cheng's merciless grasp. With a single thought, the white-robed elder would drop dead. The soul-binding pill that Ye Cheng had perfected days ago granted him that power. No matter where his quarry fled or hid, a mere whim of Ye Cheng's would end a life instantly. Ye Cheng's lips curved in a faint smile as he surveyed the kneeling figure before him. "Still a bit reluctant?" he asked softly. I dare not," the elder stammered, pressing his forehead to the ground in submission. "Good," Ye Cheng replied, nodding once. "Listen closely. Staying independent may seem honorable, but with your talent, you risk wasting your life stuck just beyond the king realm. That final step, they say, it traps half-kings forever. Yet by my side, breaking through to the king realm is only the beginning of what you can achieve." The elder, already on the cusp of true king power, felt hope and fear war within him. To pledge allegiance to this young man with unheard-of strength was daunting, but remaining alone promised an eternity of stagnation. As he knelt in the cool earth, his heart wavered between pride and desperation. Finally, he bowed his head lower still. "I submit, Master Ye Cheng. Thank you for granting me this chance." Ye Cheng extended a hand, helping the elder to his feet. "Welcome aboard," he said quietly. "Your journey to the King Realm and far beyond begins now." Baihuan's heart twisted with conflicting emotions, sorrow at losing his freedom, yet excitement at the promise of breaking into the King Realm under Lord Gu Yecheng's guidance. He had complete faith in Gu Yecheng's words. After all, the young lord's talent was undeniable. Even in the early tribulation stage, Gu Yecheng wielded strength on par with a King Realm cultivator. What kind of prodigy could this be? Was this the legendary Lingbang genius at last? For Baihuan, this was more than mere hope. It was an unprecedented opportunity. If Gu Yecheng continued to grow, even disciples like himself, barely half a step from the King Realm, would find themselves in a position of unrivaled advantage. Countless genuine King Realm powerhouses would flock to their banner, and one day, the loyalty of those followers might prove so unshakable that not even Gu Yecheng himself could persuade them to leave. His pulse hammering in his ears, Baihuan knelt and pressed his forehead to the cold stone floor. "My lord," he said, his voice steady despite the whirlwind in his chest, "my name is Baihuan.